Segundo, we're calling to order the regular meeting of the El Segundo City Council. We will start with the invocation led by Pastor Wes Harding of the Bridge Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Council Member Nickel. All please rise.
Mayor, City Council members, thank you so much for allowing prayer to go before the business of the city. I know it matters here in this house, and I also know it matters throughout our community. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this town of El Segundo. It is so unique and so endearing to us. Thank you for your covering over its citizens, its city employees, its city servants, leadership, and all the first responders and their family. You have given us a unique place to live, and we are very thankful and grateful that you have given us your wisdom to steward your resources so well here in El Segundo. Thank you, Heavenly Father. And as we go about your business today, I ask that we would seek clarity over agreement, civility over accusations. This is a vibrant place to live. We love it passionately. Therefore, we want to make this place a better home for future generations. So, Heavenly Father, please help us look for your guidance and for your wisdom for the betterment of this community. Amen.
Please join me. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So incredibly refreshing to hear a young girl speak the Pledge of Allegiance so vibrantly. Thank you. Reminds me of elementary school. It's awesome. All right, we're going to go right into special presentations. We have a presentation of new firefighters. We're thankful. I know that Chief Donovan's been working really hard to get us fully staffed. And Chris, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, and thank you for this opportunity. You know, I've talked about this a lot, and I think it's important that we understand that at the fire department, we hire for character and we teach to competency of the job. And these two individuals with me tonight speak to that. These are two incredibly high caliber individuals that went through a very rigorous background investigation and did 3 weeks of training and are now ready to join our force. And I'd like to start by introducing you to my immediate left, Jason Northgrave. Jason was born and raised in London, Ontario, Canada, where he lived with his parents and his sister and brother. And he states, as every good Canadian, Jason loves hockey and has a passion for it that he shared with his father and his brother. And now that he's got a son, he gets to enjoy hockey as a hockey coach for his son. Jason's second love came when at the age of 15, they moved from Canada to Michigan, and he discovered Michigan football. Now, Jason wanted me to say, go blue. That's going to be a little tough, so we'll stick with the fight on, Dr. Brand. While Jason enjoys his team sports, he also loves community service and being a part of something greater than himself, and that's what brought him to the fire service. After graduating from Eastern Michigan University with a degree in health administration, he followed the love of his life, his wife, Shannon, to California, where they owned and operated a private business. While working hard to maintain a successful business, Jason remembered that calling of community service and helping others, and with the support of his family, began his journey to become a full-time firefighter. Jason completed Mount San Antonio College's Basic Fire Academy, where he graduated with high honors and being identified as a captain in a squad there, and worked as an EMT on a private ambulance while pursuing his passion, and we were fortunate to grab him in El Segundo. As mentioned, Jason is married to his wife, Shannon. They have twin girls, Rihanna and Abriel, a son, Brecken, and his youngest daughter, Jules. And I've probably butchered their names, and my apologies for that, but great family. So this is Jason.
Jason, you want to say a few words? Or you're going to wait till you're done with the other?
Your call, sir.
Jason, let's hear from you, and then, yeah, thank you.
First off, thank you very much. It's been quite a journey. I shared with my family when I first came. Usually they want you to do like a station visit. You come when you're interviewing and check out the station. And so I did that. I was very blessed to meet Paramedic Croson as one of the first introductions I had to your city and to your department. And I remember leaving that meeting, we spoke for a while, And I remember driving home just being overwhelmed. I was like, I loved meeting with him. I loved hanging out in the city that day. And so as the process continued and I was able to come back to interview with Chief Donovan and the other members of the department, it was just truly a blessing. So for me, there's something that draws me to the city. I love it, the short time I've been here, and I look forward to serving each and every one of the citizens here and doing my very best to represent the traditions of the fire service. And again, just thrilled to be here and looking forward to serving. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now next up is Frank Park, who grew up in Torrance with his parents and two sisters, Catherine and Angela. He attended West Torrance High School, where he participated in wrestling and track. Along with being an athlete, Frank was also a Boy Scout who earned the distinction of Eagle Badge, which encompasses characteristics of citizenship, first aid, communication, cooking, physical fitness, and a few others. Little did he know that those characteristics really line up with the fire service. After graduation from high school, Frank went on to USC College, where he majored in political science with a minor in English. His goal was to pursue a law degree. During the summer, he continued his service to the community by interning at Homeboy Industries, an organization that gives back to the community through helping gang members that are out of prison. He tutored men and women to assist them in getting their GEDs, as he understood the value of education and giving back. After finishing his undergrad, Frank connected with his wrestling coach, who had become a firefighter. He spoke to his wrestling coach about that job and was offered an opportunity to ride along. Law school was toast. He became entrenched in the job of a firefighter. He became involved with the EMT, with McCormick Ambulance, and completed El Camino College Fire Academy, also working as a reserve with the Pasadena Fire Department. Now, we're fortunate, Frank has some experience. He's worked several years with the Rincon Fire Department in San Diego County, so he brings some experience to our organization and has been able to integrate well with our firefighters. I'm happy to say that he's back to the South Bay, where he belongs, and this is new firefighter Frank Park.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to get to know me and Jason Northgrave better. Just really looking forward to my opportunity here. Like Chief said, I've K through 12 here. My family and friends are still here, and my dream working down in San Diego has always been to come home to the South Bay and raise a family here, give my kids the same opportunities my parents gave me. So I feel extremely blessed and lucky. I know a lot of people don't get this opportunity. I don't take it for granted. And I'm just really looking forward to hitting the ground tomorrow and just getting it started. Thank you.
Let's join up for a photo, shall we? Congrats, Chief Donovan, the entire fire department. Thanks for being here in force, gentlemen, ladies. Appreciate it. All righty, next up, we have a proclamation. Councilman Nickel.
Yes, Chief Donovan's going to accept this proclamation. Proclamation, whereas in an effort to provide for the children who otherwise may not experience the joy of the holiday season, City of El Segundo Fire Department, along with other Southland fire agencies, have participated in the Spark of Love program for the past 27 years and have been a collection site for toys and food items donated during the holidays. And whereas the ever upward spiraling cost of living burdens disadvantaged and displaced families who may not be able to give gifts during the holiday season without help from the Spark of Love program. And whereas the true holiday spirit is reflected in unselfish giving, and our thoughts and hearts go out to those less fortunate than ourselves. And whereas in the past, with the help of civic-minded citizens who live and work in our community, hundreds of toys plus food items have been collected and distributed to children and families in El Segundo and other South Bay cities. Now therefore, the mayor and members of City Council of the City of El Segundo, California, do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2019 through December 20th, 2019 as the Spark of Love Toy Drive. The community is encouraged to support this holiday program by contributing toys and non-perishable food items to the El Segundo Fire Department Fire Station 1 at 314 Main Street during the period of November 12th through December 20th. And Chief Donovan's here to accept.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You want to tell us a little something about the Spark of Love?
Yeah, this is an incredible opportunity that the fire department gets to participate with ABC 7 News and local Southern California fire departments. We open our doors from that time period of November 12th through December 20th, and this community comes incredible, the amount of giving that they provide. We'll take toys, we'll take perishable food items, we collect those toys and that food, and then we'll distribute it to local charities. For instance, CASE here in El Segundo, Hope Chapel in Hermosa, the Kiwanis of LAX, and the Wounded Warrior Projects are 4 really important partners that we have. We fill our entire conference room at Station 1 with gifts and toys, which shows the incredible compassion and spirit of giving this community has, and we thank you for that.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Nickel,
Here.
Councilmember Pimentel,
Here.
Councilmember Brand,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Persek,
Here.
Mayor Boyles.
Here. All right, now is the time and place for public communications. I might remind people that if you are here to talk about item 13, I'm sorry, not item 13, item 12, public hearing related to the percent for the arts fee, we will have a opportunity for public comments during that hearing. Any other comments, you're welcome to address the mic and speak your mind, please. If you could, please state your name and address if you'd like.
Certainly. My name's Jim Cook. I'm a resident of El Segundo. I live at 514 Concord. I wanted to thank Councilman Brand for his integrity and his courage to vote in favor of, or in opposition to converting public land and recreation land to commercial space. I appeared before the council and spoke on June 18th at the occasion of the retirement of our former city manager. And I asked the council then, what was your legacy going to be? And I guess that the council, the remainder of the council has voted that your legacy is that you'd rather convert good recreation space, something that El Segundo is known for, the lakes, into something other than that, commercial entertainment space, whatever you want to call. I would ask you as a council to seriously consider and instruct the city attorney and the city manager, who's not even paying attention, to please make sure the agreements they sign with CenterCal and with Topgolf have provisions in case there needs to be canceled or amended or postponed, that we don't have an exposure to the city tax base as a result of if a change comes down the road that for some reason we can't immediately move to fulfill our obligations and those that we have protection. There's not a poison pill or something that will come back to haunt us in those agreements. Should conditions change and the situation with regards to the lakes change as well, especially as relates to the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Good evening. My name's Mark Riener. I'm an El Segundo resident. Considered a newbie because I've only been in El Segundo for 48 years. I'm here about the Topgolf. Again, supposedly, and I've been told that this is a dead issue for anybody else who opposes it. Funny, because a lot of people in this town thought this was a dead issue 3 years ago and 4 years ago. People came up and said they didn't want this. El Segundo is a quiet Mayberry by the sea. Members sitting up here on this dais, it's funny, I came across some of the old campaigns, how you loved El Segundo and you don't want to change its character. You want to leave it exactly the way it is. Statements that I came here and the people were just so overwhelmingly great. But it seems that this Topgolf is basically another parking garage fiasco, 50-year fiasco. Now, some of you new people probably don't even know what I'm talking about. Some of the older people do. It's the parking garage over here that the city of El Segundo paid to have built by taxpayers' dollars and financed parking spaces to the tune that would exceed the price of this property. This is what this Topgolf is going to be. I've heard over and over again that this is a great thing for El Segundo. It's going to generate revenue that we desperately need. If we're so desperately needing revenue, then why is it that our pensions are dragging this town down? Does anybody here, we have a new city manager, first time we met. We haven't met yet, but every single time we get something in the paper, there's always a comment from the city council that we're trying to deal with this horrible financial debt of pensions. Does anybody know what caused the pensions to begin with? Because it doesn't seem like nobody wants to address what the real problem is. So, but that's a whole other story too. I'm concerned that if this town is so desperate to drag in money and put in this Topgolf, and I've seen a Topgolf in Phoenix, where my sister lives, and it is gorgeous, except it's only 3 stories. They want 4 stories. It's like a big glass entertainment, space age, you name it, it's it. But it's not a golf course. And that would be like building Disneyland, or a version of electronic Disneyland, right here on Topgolf, right here on the lakes. The trouble is, we don't need a 50-story Disneyland and a Matterhorn for the few people we have here. I was at the golf course Saturday. Serene, quiet, people were golfing, and it didn't look like they had any problems for people to hit the driving range, because I didn't see anybody standing in line to get a spot. There were spots available. So these are the problems I brought up about. And this Topgolf, like I say, it's come up again, and I thought it was a dead deal. And so other people came to me and said, hey, what's going on? We thought this was a done deal too. This is kind of like a horror slasher movie, B-movie, where the monster comes out and you shoot it and it doesn't die, and you stab it and it doesn't die. You hit it with a truck, it doesn't die. You push it off a bridge into the water, it doesn't die. You push it off a cliff, it gets hit by a plane and it gets blown up, and it still keeps coming back to life. That's the impression that people have gotten here about this Topgolf. We are very, very protective of our city, and we like to keep it the way it is. We didn't move here because we wanted to change it to Santa Monica. If I wanted to live in Santa Monica or Culver City, I would have bought my house in Santa Monica or Culver City or Pacoima or San Diego. I chose El Segundo, and I chose to be here because what was here and not because what I could change it into. And I don't want to see our council lose track of that, of changing it to what it is not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Riener. You guys we appreciate that, but applause isn't appropriate in council chamber, but thank you.
My name is Kathy Benudis.
Nor boos for that matter. Thank you.
My name is Kathy Benudis, resident of El Segundo for a long time. One member of this council came to our house and spoke to me while he was campaigning. Like Mark said, he stated that He moved here because he liked the community the way it was. He said he wanted to keep it this way. But yet, once he got elected, what if basically majority of you, if not every single one of you, done what's better for you, maybe for what money goes in your pockets or your friends' pockets, because you sure are not doing what is right for this community. We did not need this huge pool to bring other people into this town to use. That money that was spent should have been spent on our existing pool here in town. Now, Drew, our illustrious mayor, told me right out there, bike lanes are coming. That's not an attitude that I want to hear from a city council member, let alone the mayor. You do what is right for this community, not a select group of people in this community. And if the bike lanes are so important, then why don't bicyclists pay registration, insurance, and DMV fees to pay for their little bike lanes that they're taking away from car lanes? That's not right. This Topgolf is not right. Why is little El Segundo being graced with this Topgolf? There are huge golf courses all around, Alondra Park for one. Why does a little 9-hole golf course need Topgolf? Why are you taking community open space and recreation and turning it into development? Maybe Scott would like to sell some real estate there. I don't know. I honestly don't know what you people, you care nothing about this community. That's obvious to everybody sitting here. You care about yourselves and looking important, or maybe rising up your political careers. But you're not working for this community. You're not working for the residents of this community. You're acting like dictators.
Thank you, Ms. Jimenez.
Miss what?
I didn't get your last name. Benudez, thank you.
Hi, Shannon McGid, 337 and 339 Hillcrest Street. I just gotta say, I'm so tired of hearing about Topgolf. Let's just pass it already. Topgolf can only be good for our city. No one wants to go to a dilapidated little lakes. We won't even have meetings at the lakes anymore because the ceiling is falling onto the floor when you use the restroom. It is old, it is tired. The lakes would bring so much to our community. It would bring revenue, it would bring jobs, it would bring fun. And you know what? We've got all these hotels coming, and it'd be a place for the people to go and do something. And my husband's an avid golfer. He stood up here about a year ago and was totally against Topgolf. He has done a total 360. We've visited them, we've had a good time at them, and we are totally for them. But I would like to say, whether I'm for it or against it, could we please decide? I can't open another newspaper and see it going the other way. I mean, it's just so ridiculous how wishy-washy it's been. I have been for it since day one. My husband's now for it. All the golfers I know are for it. It's just something totally fun for our city. And we are Mayberry. We are Mayberry over here. We've got our Main Street. We've got our small hometown, El Segundo. Sepulveda is now PCH. I think we need Topgolf to be right there. It would be just such an added bonus for our community. Please decide yes or no and just done. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. McGinn.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Ryan Baldino. I live on East Palm here in town. I've served on the Planning Commission for about 13 years. I served on the RFP task force regarding the Topgolf RFP process. So for the 7 years we've been talking about Topgolf, I've been engaged in this discussion. The first point I want to make is that this is not sneaking up on anybody in this room or anyone who's been paying attention. This was not done at the last minute. There have been numerous stakeholders who have had their time to participate. When I was on the RFP subcommittee, we had representatives from Chevron, representatives from the golf course, from the Parks and Rec Commission, all evaluating these RFPs. And let's remember why we had to have an RFP process, or why we have to do something with the lakes. The lakes is losing money. The lakes is an enterprise fund that was designed to actually generate money to give back to the general fund. And what we saw from the last meeting, and I want to thank staff on the thorough presentation of facts, the lakes loses money. This whole Save the Lakes movement is false. You cannot save the lakes by saying no to Topgolf. You say no to Topgolf, the lakes will have to be shut down because it's losing money. There is no other viable option. That's why we had the RFP process. So I went to the meeting that was held on Saturday with the Save the Lakes group. And what I saw there was the same disinformation being pushed out by what appeared to me a meeting led by people who live in Manhattan Beach. People in Manhattan Beach telling us how to collect signatures for those people in El Segundo so the folks who live in Manhattan Beach can tell us what's best for our town. So if there is a referendum, I ask anyone who lives in this town, before you sign it, ask the person who's collecting signatures where they live. Ask that person if they care about our police force and our fire force and the pensions that we have to pay. Because Topgolf is a solution where all we're giving up is a driving range. And if you don't want to go to Topgolf, go to the first level and hit your bucket of balls for $10. If you don't want to go to Topgolf, go to the brand new clubhouse. Play your 9 holes there. You never have to walk a foot into Topgolf. But what dismays me is when people who don't live in our town say the lakes makes money. The lakes doesn't make money. When they imply that those on city council didn't read the Topgolf information, but they were paid money by Topgolf, things that aren't true are being said in order to get what a vocal minority want to have happen in this town. The facts are 10% of the folks in this town who live here use the lakes. 90% of us don't use the lakes. I've got a good friend who grew up in town who says, I've lived here my whole life, I've never been to the lakes. I've been to 3 Topgolfs. I don't want to see this process that has been through such a thorough vetting by council, by planning commission, by the subcommittees, get hijacked by a vocal group in Manhattan Beach. So if there's further talk about a referendum or integrity, let's think about what we've done to get to this point, the process that we've been to, and the consensus we've tried to build. I think, as it was said, what more can Topgolf give this community that we've asked for and haven't gotten? We've gotten lights, we've gotten a better deal, we've gotten pretty much what we want for our youth and our golf programs. And for those who want to hit a cheap bucket of balls, it's not enough. So they're willing to torpedo this entire deal for their own personal interests, be it cheap bucket of balls or a place to drop your kid off for a couple of hours. I want to strongly disagree with the prior speaker who says you guys are in this for your own good. I am very much aware of the time and the commitment and the hours you put into this, and I know you wouldn't do it if you didn't really care about this city. And for that, I want to thank you all for your time. Even if I disagree with you, I love the fact that you volunteer your time to serve this community and you wrestle with these decisions to try to make the best decision, not just for the golfers, but for the people who live in this town. So if you want to talk about staying in your lane and knowing what your role is to represent people who live here, not people who golf here. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Baldino.
Dave Atkinson, 42 resident, 727 West Mariposa. As just stated, this has been going on for a long time. I was the one that brought it to council 7 years ago. It was very simple. As for me, I really don't want Topgolf because I don't hit the balls. I play golf on the golf course, and we're not losing that. We're getting a brand new clubhouse. This one's falling apart. It leaks, the plumbing's bad, and it's just in bad disarray. We have no money to repair it. So he is correct. It will close because it does lose money. The brand new clubhouse is going to be a little bigger, actually the same size, but it's going to be brand new. Everything's good. You got extra putting greens, you got extra practice areas, all the things that were asked for by the people that presently are there. And the reason I'm packing Topgolf is very simple. The city is going through a crisis of budgets. It's not going to change. It's not going to get better. Costs are not going to go down. We all know that every year our tax base goes up. Here's a prime example. People in Manhattan Beach property tax, 14.5%. That's what their city keeps. We get 6 cents. Big difference, 8 cents on every dollar with the way that real estate is moving right now. We have our own fire, our own police, and our own school system. Those also eventually will have to change if we don't continue to bring revenue into this city. We just went through a trash thing, and everyone says, oh, I'm against it, including me. Well, guess what? It works very, very smoothly, and I found out it benefits the city quite nicely. Yes, it does cost us each month. Well, guess what? That's going to be the first of many charges that you're going to be paying if we don't bring in more revenue. Topgolf is a revenue-generating thing. We had, years ago, they had a person come in here and say that it was a 40 times option. So if they're really just giving us $2 million, we know it's greater than that. Gee, this whole South Bay area is going to get over $80 to $100 million. That's all, by the way, on file if anyone would like to read it and not believe me. The people that play golf, play golf. Those that don't play golf, what difference does it make? I'll tell you the difference. The new pool that they were talked about, well, that's going to need some help. Probably come from Topgolf. The ball fields, all these old buildings we've got in the city, probably Topgolf. They're giving us $200,000 a year. $200,000 a year for infrastructure. You can plan $1 million project now, and in 5 years, they give us another 10%. They're also giving us $200,000 every year to help with the park and recs or other city entities that need to be taken care of, that are being worn out, not taken care of. Not because we don't want to take care of them. We can't afford to take care of them. Pensions are a part of life. Get used to it. It's contracts made years and years and years ago. You can go back all the way down to governors of this state that's done all these things. We are trying to work around it and make it work. We love our own fire, our own police, and our own school system. That's why we are El Segundo. So why we're listening to another city is beyond my imagination. And I'm really quite ashamed of some of the people that live here that have such self-centered ideas that, oh, this is El Segundo. It can't change. I like it the way I like it. Well, it's not about you or me. It's about everyone that lives here, everyone that works here, and everyone that comes here to visit our city and says, my God, I fell in love. Half the people don't even know where we are because of our name. And yet we're in Ocean City. Think about it. And you got people that come in from Manhattan Beach, the other ones, they are here to help the city. Doubtful. Okay, they're here because their children go to very good schools here, which is very good. I mean, they're teaching them lessons in golf that I am totally behind. However, this is not basically a babysitting service or a training ground. This has to become a business entity. And for those that think the golf course is going away, it is not. They're spending $3 million or more. We're going to have lights. Right now, you want to go play golf? Oh, can't do it after 5, can you? We need a time change. Guess what? You will from now on. And assuming they have overflow, we're going to make more money on the golf course. It's actually a separate entity that they are going to oversee to make it work. This is nothing more than people that don't like things for their selfish reasons, and they're totally wrong. This is El Segundo. And we are El Segundo. We should act like El Segundo, not listen to a bunch of propaganda that isn't true. Right now, there's things circulating for these people. I won't bring it up. It'll all be hopefully be brought up. They're saying things that just aren't true. They're in the contract. You guys put it all together. I have put the first one together. None of those things are true. But they're spreading a lot of lies and rumors to get people to sign a petition. And you know what really is sad? A lot of those people signing a petition, like someone said, never went to the lakes. Probably never will. Probably never will. So then you have corporations moving in here with this new facility, assuming it happens, that guess what? They won't have to build a boardroom. They can use Topgolfs. Wow. Imagine how the employees would feel. I know my time's up. Definitely keep Topgolf alive. Don, I'm ashamed of you. You're a smart man.
Thank you, Mr. Atkinson.
I wasn't planning on speaking. My name is Pat Boydston. I live at 526.5 Penn Street. I did attend that meeting last week, and I would like to say that the people that I know that are concerned about the golf course are very sincere. This is, for me, when I was there and I was walking around and I got the feeling of the lakes and the tranquility, I thought, what a beautiful place for us to go to unwind. My concern is, I've lived in El Segundo over 30 years, and I've seen a lot of changes. Just driving here down Main Street was like a zoo. I've seen many establishments leave, and because of rents going up, et cetera, et cetera. I wish you would really consider carefully what you're planning. My concern is this is going to be another nip and deduct. You're going to carve out a space and then, oh yeah, we need more money. We're going to carve out another space. Please be prudent. There's a lot. I think there's a lot you can do with the lakes to improve it, for people to go there for lunch, whatever, private parties and stuff. Promote it. Don't demote it, and please give this serious consideration. Listen to everybody talking about this. Get the information out there in the El Segundo Herald. But I don't want a big establishment there that's commercial. I want the tranquility. And from a mental health standpoint, I think we need that. I have a bit of a mental health background. We need places like that to unwind. So I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Sorry I didn't get your last name, Pat. Sorry, I didn't get your last name, Pat.
Beg your pardon?
Your last name, sorry.
Boydston.
Thank you.
Boydstun.
Thank you. Okay, is that it for public comments? All right, looks like, oh, no, one more.
Hello, I'm Mary Courtney from Manhattan Beach, and I want to thank you for your nice comments about our sincerity. At the heart of this issue is a lot of misinformation that both sides can claim are accurate and good, but the one that we hold to be true per written documents and documentation is the reason we are trying to save the lakes. It's a public park. It belongs to all the people of El Segundo. And it's a strong regional matter, too, because of its proximity in such a heavily trafficked corridor connecting LAX to the South Bay. So we care about the lakes because generations have golfed there. It does make the city money. Historically, it has made $500,000 net to the city after paying everything else. Those numbers have been massaged, and we know why and how, going back, way back. We just want to save a nationally recognized Yelp Top 10 LA County youth program highlight of LA County. It's a public park with a deed restriction. Let the people of El Segundo vote on if they agree that you can change their public park to a commercial development.
Thank you, Mrs. Courtney.
Hi, my name is Paula Cook. I live on Concord Street. I'm an El Segundo resident. I'd like to speak to the same issue that the person just said. I don't have personally anything against Topgolf per se, but I am concerned about converting public land to commercial land. It doesn't seem like that's the right thing to do. Also, in that agreement we have with Topgolf, we assume it's going to make money, but there is that clause in there that says after a certain period, if they don't, we're going to pay in. So it's not clear to me that it's really going to come out like we think. The second thing I would like to speak to is that I was at the last meeting, and the city manager got up and said that the Lakes was losing millions, plural, of dollars. And I thought, whoa, I didn't know. I mean, I knew it wasn't profitable, but I didn't know it was losing that amount of money. So I went and looked online at the city financial reports for the last 10 years. And over the last 10 years, as measured, however they allocate overhead, which I do not know, or burden, depending how you call it. The last 10 years, it's lost 1.2 or 1.3 million. I realize that's not small change, but that's not millions of dollars, and so I guess I'm a little concerned about hyperbole to sort of help the project along. And if you look at cash flow, it's like over the last 10 years, and I threw out all the fund transfers when I did these numbers because I don't really know what those mean. That's money going from different accounts, and I'm not really sure if they should be included. And it was 1.6 million, so we're not talking about millions of dollars. So I guess I would I'm concerned about that kind of promotion of the project. And the third thing I would like to ask is if there's the item about converting, I don't know the exact term, whatever's on the consent agenda about converting the park land to commercial land, if it would be taken off this consent agenda and voted for separately. That's my request for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Cook. Any other public comments? No. All right, city manager, I'm sorry, council comments or public, or city manager for that matter, either one.
My conscience is clear.
Seeing none, we are on to item A. Thank you for your comments. Approval of agenda order and waiver of full reading of ordinances and resolutions. Are there any changes to the agenda and or polls?
I'd like to pull number 11.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem pulling number 11. Any other polls?
Number 8.
Okay, Dr. Brand pulling number 8. All right, do I have a motion to approve items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10?
So moved. Second.
What's wrong?
The change.
Oh, yeah, new format, excuse us. Do I have a motion to
So
approve the
moved.
agenda order? Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. All right, item 8, Dr. Brand.
Yeah, I pulled item 8. I think it was poor judgment to put this on the consent agenda in the first place. Just like I talked about 2 weeks ago, it seemed very inappropriate to jam through a transaction that we haven't heard anything about in over a year, all with a staff report, a public hearing, and council votes in one fell swoop. But we did it. I mean, there's no need to roll that way when you have the 4 votes here. You could take it in due time and in stride, but we didn't. There's been a lot of emails that I've seen come through, and there's a couple of themes that I keep reading about. One is this idea that we need this project because we need money here at the city. We're desperate for funds, and we're looking at a bleak future. That's a glass is half empty mentality, and not one I subscribe to. I think it's a scenario that's not accurate. Our main source of funds is the transient occupancy tax. It's up. The Rams and Chargers haven't even gotten here yet. We've built a couple thousand hotel rooms. All of these things are thriving. Our reserves are in excess of 25% when everything is considered. We're doing great, but we sit around here and we talk about the next recession, okay? And we're in a state that was left $25 billion in reserves by our outgoing governor. This California and El Segundo are doing great. And if we needed any money, which we don't, we could raise the TOT by 1%. That would yield $1.25 million. We could charge a fee for parking in our structures here by business travelers, tourists, and foreigners. There's low-hanging fruit to get money. You don't need to go to Topgolf to secure it, but we don't even need it now. But that's out there in the public that they believe that. Second, this idea that everyone's for Topgolf, and the only people that are against it live in the beach cities. That's simply not accurate. And I found that out in January of 2016 when I paid for a professional telephone poll and included Topgolf in that survey, not knowing, having been gone from the council for 4 years, what the issues were with that. I found out that 49% of the respondents were against Topgolf. These are El Segundo voters. No voters in Hermosa Beach or Palos Verdes. They're El Segundo voters. They're high frequency. are high proportion voters, high propensity voters. They would vote on Christmas in the snow because they believe voting is a right that should be used, and we paid a big price to get it. Their no on Topgolf in January of 16, 40% were for it. So I could see it was a very divided issue then, almost 4 years ago. I don't think that data is accurate anymore. It's too dated. But the point is, there are a lot of people in El Segundo who vote here that don't support Topgolf. And those of you who are just on ESPN and you're blogging and doing your social media, and the people don't even get down to vote, think that's the whole world. The whole network is for it. They're not. The people who built this town are not for it. And you just haven't heard from them, or maybe don't know they're out there, but they are. And so, like I said at the end last time, the next thing is the referendum. And since I said that that might come, it has come. Somebody's approached the city clerk's office, somebody who lives in El Segundo here. And the referendum starts tomorrow, and they have a 30-day period to collect signatures to challenge this council's vote and to put this to a vote of the people of El Segundo. Nobody will be voting on this in Redondo Beach or any place else. It's about right here in El Segundo. So those of you who think everybody in El Segundo is for Topgolf will find out through the referendum, and if it leads to a vote, find out there that it's not all about Topgolf. Everybody's not for that. I hope the people get a chance, since we've spent about 8 years on this, and it's gone back and forth, and we're all sick of it being 3-2 yes and 3-2 no and 4-1 yes, to get this worked through as fast as possible. The process is difficult. 30 days to collect signatures. You've got to get 10% of the signatures of the registered voters, even though about 3/4 of them don't vote. So it'll be a challenge, and I don't know how that's going to come out. But if it does come out leading to a vote, you can look forward to that vote late in 20 or in 21 or even 22. It's like I said 2 weeks ago, Yogi Berra, it ain't over till it's over. Thank you.
Okay, please keep the applause down. It's not appropriate for chamber. Thank you. Council.
I'm not really sure what to make of that. I'm not sure if in this seat it is appropriate or inappropriate to state a position or to promote an action of the citizens that yet cannot take place. You know, hearing Dr. Brand's comments, it just makes me think that if a voter referendum is to be, and the voters are asked to sign something, to Mr. Baldino's comments at public comment, know where this is coming from, know where the money behind it is coming from, know where, because this is a campaign. It would be a campaign. I mean, City Attorney, is it even appropriate for us to discuss this prior to our action?
It hasn't qualified for the ballot as of yet, and so it's a bit of a gray area, but given that there are First Amendment rights and it's generally within the subject matter jurisdiction, I would go to the position of yes, it's appropriate until it qualifies for the ballot.
Now, if
it qualifies for the ballot.
If a referendum is turned in, is that a public document?
Portions of it, but not the signatures.
So it would be impossible for anyone to know who signed it in order to talk to them or find out what they really care about the town?
That's correct. The only parties that would see that would be the city clerk and the county registrar to verify signatures, that they are in fact registered voters.
Got it. Yeah, to that point, I'm ready to move this for approval.
Yes.
But to the discussion of the referendum, I feel that the 5 of us were elected, 3 in one election, 2 in another, to make decisions for the general public, for our citizens. You asked us not to put every decision back to you. You asked us to sit up here, collect the information, speak to you, and then make decisions. And I feel like it's setting a precedent that, well, if we're not willing to make this decision, or if we're not good enough to make this decision, then why are we up here to begin with? Or we should just kick every decision to you. Maybe the next time there's a shortfall in the budget, we can send that to the voters and have you guys decide how you'd like us to pay for that. I mean, it's the information. Let's just say the council agenda in front of us. I don't know if any of you happen to stop by the lobby here and read through it. 445 pages? 442. Just a little, 442, sorry, a little light reading over the past week. So I would hate to see this become some commercial marketing ploy to see who can spend the most money. Those that want to save the lakes and spread information that they believe to be true, or those who want to see Topgolf there and them spread information that they seem to be true. I don't see that as something that's beneficial to our community. I don't see it as something that's beneficial to a city that's on the rise. Is that something that the citizens of this town truly believe would help us attract businesses? Large corporations that pay the lion's share of the tax burden. These large corporations that pay the bills so that we can keep our tax rates low. I just don't understand the rationale, and so, Dr. Van, I'm sorry, I completely disagree with your approach, your perspective, and your position, and the fact that you would encourage that type of propaganda war, how you could see the outcome of that ever being beneficial for the town as a whole. But that's all I got. Truly.
Thank you, Councilman Nickel. Councilman Pimentel or Mayor Pro Tem, any comments?
Yeah, I have a comment. Was stated that we don't need money, and we do have reserves. Well, we have reserves because we haven't put any money into our capital improvements. It only recently have we actually been spending money on our capital improvements. If you go to our clubhouse at Rec Park and go into the bathrooms there, they're deplorable. If you go to our bathrooms at the Joslin Center, they need a major overhaul just so the seniors can use the bathrooms properly. And we don't have the money for that. You go to our skate park, it's a disaster. Have you been to the teen center? The teen center just needs to be demolished at this point. It's so bad that we turned it into a haunted house. I mean, it is terrible, absolutely terrible. And we don't have the money to fix that. Then someone said at the last council meeting from Manhattan Beach, well, you guys are a baseball town. That's why you care about the baseball. Have you seen our bleachers at the baseball field? We need to revamp them, and we don't have the money. And right now, our money is going to subsidize this golf course. So if you want to save the lakes, we need something to ensure that we can put money back into the lakes, and Topgolf is the solution. Because if we don't do something like Topgolf's, the lakes may disappear, and we may put soccer fields, because that's what our residents want. You know, we went out and canvassed our constituents of what they wanted in a parks and recs and open space. The big thing that came up was soccer fields. And that would be cheaper. We could bulldoze the whole area, put some green grass, and it wouldn't cost us any more money. So if you want to save the lakes, we have to do something, and that's why we're doing this, and that's why we move forward. And Dr. Brandt, to your 49%, that's still 51% that are for the lakes, or for Topgolf. So yes, I want to save the lakes, but we have to do something to help get money so that we can put money back into the lakes, and that we actually have to have money so we can put money to our Joslin Center, to our Teen Center, to our Parks and Recs. And currently, we don't have that. So that's why I do want to save the lakes, and that's why I'm for Topgolf.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilman Pimentel.
I don't think anyone up here ran to try and make people unhappy. And so I am very sympathetic and empathetic to both sides of it, because when we go door to door in the electoral process, we hear it from everybody. And they grace us by talking to us on a Sunday morning when we knock on them. And sometimes they're cranky and sometimes we are too. But what I got from that as we went into this process was a laundry list of, to the point of Dr. Brand, the 49% of high-propensity voters with a landline who answered the phone and answered questions, right? They're out there. And even if that 49% is not representative of full half of the city, maybe that's a small sampling size, but certainly a distinct 30%, or maybe 20%. But of those, we collected basically the laundry list of what do you want in this? What are the sacred things? What are the sacred cows of that golf course? And what do we need to protect? And the reason that this thing cloaked and scoped for about a year is, as we sat there in the negotiating process, is to a point, we dug our heels in and protected each one of those. And so it's a bit difficult, when we go to different meetings, and I think sometimes we hear people with misconceptions of the last deal, or maybe the first iteration of the deal, as opposed to where the current deal with Topgolf and CenterCal lives, because so many of the things that we heard concerns, and even some concerns about here, are consecrated in it. The constraint to the open space and how it will be protected, the constraints on what can be built on the sites, the constraints on what those sites will be used for. All of those things, to children's programs, to almost to the dollar pricing per bucket of balls, and I know that was somewhat misstated in the last one, but that's a commercial decision, and those are obviously things that Topgolf can control for. But all of those concerns are things that we tried to address. What's very difficult, though, without getting into the sort of the grand ethos of why you serve, is when you go there and you say, look, there's a fiscal math problem to solve for, and we don't want to charge extra taxes and fees on the people of the city, so how do we do it? Maybe it's a combination of TOT, because those are people who are transient too here. Maybe it's things on parking. Or to a degree, maybe it's things that we build an entertainment complex that allows our business travelers and residents to go use and cohabitate sort of in the same recreative space. I don't pretend it's a perfect solution. I think it's an excellent deal for the city. I support it. I will happily sit there and I walk the streets, and I walked them last weekends and talk to people who I know hate the concept of building anything on the golf course, and try and talk through with them about ways that we've solved for things on it. I can't pretend it's perfect. I do think it's very good. I think it will be a success. And for a 50-year agreement, it's a really, really difficult to get that completely right, but I really think we got it largely right. I support it, and I hope to be able to win over the support of people who love it and are temporarily against it.
Thank you, Councilman Pimentel. I just want to review a couple quick numbers. 98%. Anyone know what that is? 98% is the share of revenue that we get from commercial activity, not residents in this town. It's actually higher than that. $40 million. Anyone know what that is? That is the capital improvement project number that we have ahead of us over the next 20 years, of which we have zero funds for. Some of the facility needs you already discussed. 4 years. Anyone know what that represents? Structural deficit, 4 years, starting this year, this fiscal year that we're currently in. Pensions, big problem, we're aware of it. As former Councilman Atkinson eloquently stated, that decision many, many years ago. We're living with it now. This council in the last 2 years have made decisions to save over $11.6 million in pension for the first time. 225, what does that number represent? That is the average number of El Segundo residents that golf regularly at the lakes. I can go on with the numbers because the numbers tell a very bleak picture of our reality as it relates to Topgolf specifically. The deal that Councilman Nickel and Councilman Pimentel were able to get is almost twice as good as what was originally proposed. I see Dave Atkinson shaking his head as he was involved 7 years ago. The process has been nothing other than diligent, transparent, and absolutely collaborative. So I also support this project wholeheartedly. Thank you. We ready to vote?
Do we have to
We don't need to
on it or
vote.
just
It's a second reading,
reintroduce
right? Reintroduce? Yeah, thanks, Scott.
it? May I have the honor of introducing it?
Yes, sir.
Actually, it's for adoption.
Oh,
Okay.
so, okay. I would like to make a motion to adopt this.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
4-1, thank you. All right, Mayor Pro Tem, you pulled item 11. Thank you.
Do
Okay.
you want me to read it?
Yes, please, read it.
So adopt and approve job classification specifications, title changes, and exam plans for 1, Communications and Legislations Affairs Manager and Media Supervisor in the City Manager's Office, 2, Business Services Manager and Accounting Technician in the Finance Department, and 3, Technical Service Analyst in the Information Technology Department. So I wanted to pull this because I do want the public to know that, we as a council did not approve any additional headcount. So I just want the staff to give an explanation of how they were able to reconfigure some positions to come up with these positions. And then I also wanted to basically just give a quick explanation on how these new positions will help us achieve our goals that we outlined in our strategic plan.
Scott, you going to tackle that one?
Okay. I'll do my best here, and if need be, Deputy City Manager Barbara Voss can chime in.
And it's really just brief overview for the
I understand.
public, yeah.
And much of this was in play when I got here. So for clarity, to reiterate what the Mayor Pro Tem said, there's no new headcount here. It's basically moving some positions around and reclassifying.
Scott, would you mind just pulling the mic a little bit
Oh.
closer? It's not just you, it's been throughout the night.
Okay, I'm not used to people telling me I don't speak loud enough. So usually it's the other way around, so I'll start again. So the Mayor Pro Tem was correct. The reclassifications do not represent an increase in headcount or new positions. It's more or less moving positions around and reclassifying, and the funding has been included in the adopted budget. So there are 5 classifications, as I understand it, that's delineated on page 217. We'll start in the City Manager's office. We did provide, at a request of a council member, we did provide an org chart so you can see graphically, where'd that go? I'll go, it's in my head. So the City Manager's office is being organized into to 3 sections. So one is for, do you have that org chart? It's right here. Right. Here it is, sorry. One is for economic development, another is communications, legislative affairs, and the third is constituent relations, special reports. So economic development, there's no change. We have one position, economic development coordinator. And then for communications, legislative affairs, that's really the public information function. We're recommending to blend those together. And the position recommendation is to create a communications and legislative affairs manager. This will be a mid-management level position. Beneath that will be a media supervisor position. That's a supervisor level position, a graphic design specialist, and then other positions below that. So the new position there is the communications and legislative affairs manager, that's 1, and media supervisor 2. Those are the 2 positions there. The management analyst position, that's already in the budget. That would be over under special projects. So that's the city manager's office. In the finance department, it's proposed to reclassify the revenue manager to business services manager and to reclassify an accounting specialist to an accounting technician. Information technology, we have an information systems specialist. That's the prior title, and we're going to change that to technical services analyst for 2.
Yeah, just to add to the finance department, so the reclassification of the 2 positions, and then I have a classification I'm downgrading. I have a vacant position that was the individual retired. It was the payroll and budget supervisor. So I'm downgrading that to a management analyst. And the cost savings there I'm using to reclassify the revenue manager to business services manager and the accounting specialist to an accounting technician, and the end result is a budgetary savings of $3,500. So I'm actually saving money for finance.
And just for clarification, just give us an example of how these are fitting into our strategic goals. These changes, that's what I really want to get to is
Sorry.
We're repurposing for a reason because we've identified 5 strategic goals, and these new positions are going to help us achieve those new goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with the downgrade. So the payroll and budget supervisor, those functions they reside within the finance manager that I've brought on board over 2 years ago, and my accounting staff. Council approved 2 accountant positions for me a couple of years ago. So that position is really obsolete. Retooling that to a management analyst position, which finance desperately needs to help serve the city manager's office, city council, and the rest of the organization. So we can get to metrics, measuring metrics. So a lot of these strategic goals that we need to achieve are labor intensive, especially in the finance department. And that management analyst position, I think, is key to help us achieve some of the reporting that council would like to see that we haven't been able to deliver yet. The reclassification from revenue manager to business services manager, expanding that role and including it into the strategic plan and some of the goals in the strategic plan, so that's going to help meet that. And it will actually, I think, enhance the customer service experience that the community and the business community will be experiencing. And same with the reclassification of the accounting specialist to accounting technician. We're broadening and expanding some of those duties and functions to help provide additional enhanced customer experiences for the constituents.
Mayor Pro Tem, did I answer your question?
Yeah. It's really more, I also want to just talk about the communications manager, and I know communications has been a huge goal for us, and I just wanted to.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Good evening, members of council. So as you know, my role a year ago was changed from economic development manager to deputy city manager, and I was given the task of creating a citywide communications program as well as managing the economic development program, which I'd been doing for 3 years prior, now 4. So we, at that time, I presented a staffing wish list, and at that time I was told that no new headcount. So I looked very closely, and part of the transition was El Segundo TV coming in under the city manager's office, under communications, which makes perfect sense. Dan O'Toole retired from the community cable manager position. So really wanted to try to find a way to work within the headcount that we had to try to make all of this happen. I presented in May a communications plan, a 10-point communications plan. We're knocking down some of the objectives of that. Things are moving forward very well within the communications program. There's just a lot of work to be done. Communications, everything from emergency communications, external, internal, stakeholders, social media, the website. There's just a lot within communications that we are trying to accomplish. And Kristen Bergevin's been working with us part-time, helping with that, helping primarily on the website, because our vision for the website is really that centralized portal. That's so important in communications, that we have to have that strong website where we can start on social media sending people and really getting those connections made, that everybody's now turning to the website as a reliable, current source of information. So that's happening in January. The website's going to be launched. So this communications and legislative affairs manager position is really going to focus on implementing those 10 goals of the communications plan. So then I looked at El Segundo TV, and where does that leave El Segundo TV? Because their manager is now being reclassified. And so within El Segundo TV, I thought there was a need for a supervisory position, not the full management position, because the communications manager would have some oversight over El Segundo TV. So that supervisor position is a way to backfill that sort of additional leadership and management in El Segundo TV. And we're also looking at El Segundo TV, and I could really talk for a long time, so we're looking at El Segundo TV in terms of all the programming they're doing, all the events and everything that they're recording and the CDs they're making, and really looking at how we can streamline and be more effective with that programming and consolidate some of that programming to better communicate what we're trying to communicate to the public and still work within the confines of the staffing that we have. So that's really my logic behind that goal of communications and economic development. We have Christina Ravelas she left. Christina Ravelas is the economic development coordinator, and I've been working really hard to get her really trained well in the economic development profession, but also in what we're doing in El Segundo. She's taking on a lot of the work that I was doing as economic development manager. So we want to continue on that path to implement both economic development and communications.
And just for clarification, we are launching a new website in January, which is, and one of our main goals in the new website is to ensure that we are real-time with information and it's much more streamlined. And to do that and manage that, we really need to ensure that we have the staff aligned
Yes.
to the new website. And so
Yes.
one of these responsibilities of this communications manager will be ensuring that the communication's accurate, up-to-date,
Absolutely.
real-time. Because I know currently today, if you go to our website, you're going to get some pretty old information that's not
Right.
being. Okay.
Right. And we're training, we have a communications committee. We're training one person or two people from each department to be that communications liaison, so that rather than having communications staff, we're using a little bit of staff time from each department to make sure that the information from each department is timely and accurate. We've got the 3 new communications tools. The newsletter is revamped. That goes out monthly. We've got the city manager's update that's going out every week. And then we have news for staff, because another component is that employer of choice and improving communications within city departments, so that the staff feel more engaged and that they're connected and they know what's going on. So those 3 things have already been implemented using the new Gov delivery, and we expect that'll only get stronger as we launch the new website.
Thank you, Barbara. Anyone else?
Barbara, the PIO position, will that also handle social media then? Did I hear you say that correctly? Was we start using that channel down the line?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
it would be the gatekeeper pretty much for everything communication based, or?
Well, yes. We have, like I said, we have a communications committee, and we have social media channels for various departments. The library has fire, PD. So members of that communication committee will still do routine posts and things on their site. But we're trying to integrate, share information where appropriate across all social media channels, and then augment what we're doing on the City of El Segundo channel.
Okay, some more coordination and
Yes.
strategic things. Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
definitely. Uh-huh.
Would you
Well,
like? Yeah, sorry,
Don't go yet. Will these additions, or say non-additions,
Right.
just people in
Shuffling.
the office, the
Yeah.
shuffling, will this help us reduce our current budget that we have for the PR?
Yes, short answer. A lot of the work that we've been doing in the marketing, with the marketing agency, is determining, there's research involved. Who's our target audience? How are we communicating to that audience? What's our tagline? What are our colors? What's our scheme? Style guide? All of that's been done. So we have where big ideas take off. We have El Segundo Start Here. Those 2 things, those 2 campaigns fall under economic development. But as Christina has been trained now on Gov Delivery and is updating the website, we've been starting to pare back what we're using outside firms for and really strengthening what we're doing internally. And also using, like, for example, Robert Settle is a graphic designer, working with him because we can give him the colors and sort of the brand imagery that we have, and he's going to be doing some designing for us for economic development as well. So trying to use all the resources we have.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, would you like to move approval?
Yes, so I'd like to move approval for item number 11.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? 5-0, okay. All right, on item 12, the percent for the arts, thinking about this as from the perspective of abundance of caution, I am rebuilding my commercial property. And so I don't think it would be wise to weigh in on this matter, so I'm going to leave it to Mayor Pro Tem to lead this one. I'll recuse myself. If you could just grab me when you're done. Thank you.
Did we need to take a break or anything? Do you need a break? Do you need a break? Doctor?
Hey. What she said,
Diane, Doctor.
I can go use the little boys' room.
Okay. Okay. You ready, Melissa? Okay, so this is the time and place herein to fix for a public hearing. regarding an ordinance amending Title 15 of the El Segundo Municipal Code to establish a public art in lieu of fee requirement to be assessed on new development, modifications to existing development, and a cultural development fund, otherwise known as percent of arts fee. City Clerk, has proper notice of this hearing been given in a timely manner?
Yes, it has.
City Clerk, has written communication been received regarding this public hearing?
Yes, and you've received it.
Okay, the written okay, so the public hearing is now open. Mr. Mitnick, who will give the presentation?
Our library director.
So good evening, Council. It is now time to continue the conversation about a cultural development program in El Segundo. When you last considered the item back in July, When you last considered the item back in July, 4 of you stated that you are interested in establishing an arts fee in El Segundo. You did direct the Arts and Cultural Advisory Committee and staff to raise the threshold for where the fee would apply, as well as consider eliminating the cap for contributions. Michael Kresge from the ACC is here tonight to present the revised proposal, as well as remind the community about the many, many economic and quality of life benefits that result from consistently investing in public art and programming and spaces. And just as a reminder, the Planning Commission did vote 4-0 to recommend approval of the Cultural Development Ordinance as revised at their October meeting. So, Michael?
Does this button work, or I point to you? Okay, very good. It's talking about the El Segundo Cultural Development Program, and yes, we're seeking support from the City Council for this program because arts and cultural programs are important for the city to increase the value of the city, the quality of life, and just more people coming in and finding more interesting things to see and to do. City already promotes itself using the arts. This was an ad that was in the Los Angeles Times business section a few weeks ago, and a couple of the pictures already are showing the arts or the visual image of the city as being important for attracting new businesses and new activity here. So the city's already promoting this kind of thing. This Cultural Development Fund would take it to the next level. And it would support things we've talked about before. Permanent art, for example, murals, sculptures, things, public improvements like that. Temporary art, things that would be set up for special events, special occasions as part of performing arts. Performing arts, theater, music in the park, things that people could come to. Public programs such as lectures, conferences, kind of educational events. And finally, public improvements and capital improvements. If you're going to have a new bench, a new bus shelter, you would involve arts with that to make it something distinct and unique for the city. So, also the Creative Economy Report that was out last spring, recall their recommendations to grow the creative economy, which is graphic design, arts, architecture within the city. They said to maintain the city's unique character, you would have artists get involved with the planning and development of the city, and toward that end, establish a fee to support the arts in El Segundo. Now, it sounds good, but there have been some concerns about, well, is this going to drive away business? Is it going to be an excessive burden on development? Is it going to discourage development? And finally, what's it ultimately going to accomplish? So to consider this in context of the regional picture, there are already 36 cities in Los Angeles County which already have what you'd call a percent for arts program. And these include some of the cities that are the high-profile cities, which are attracting new visitors, new residents, new businesses, and include cities that were designated by the LA County Economic Development Corporation as among the most business-friendly in LA County. Along with the 36 cities, Los Angeles County is proposing to have a ordinance of this kind, percent for arts, for the unincorporated areas of LA County as well. So you look at the map, it's turning really green, yes, for the arts. And it's become a commonly accepted practice throughout cities in the region and the county. And it could work here as well. So the proposed program, based on input that was received from the council last time and other people we've talked to. Number one, it is a 1% fee on commercial, industrial construction and renovation, no fees on residential development, a $2 million project threshold. There'll be no fee on any project below $2 million. It kicks in once you go above $2 million, the total value of the project has the fee. And finally, no caps. The fees applied to full project valuations regardless of the size of the project. So you compare that to what other cities are doing, and you find that first, the 1% fee, 29 cities have the 1% fee. 7 cities have fees up to 2%, so they're even higher. So El Segundo's fee would match the prevailing standard among the 36 cities. Number 2, no fees on residential development. 30 out of 36 cities have fees on residential development. This cultural development program here would not have a fee on residential. So in effect, more business friendly for residential development than any of the other cities. No caps. There are only 4 cities that have caps. All the other ones do. Or, yes, only 4 cities have a cap. All the other ones do not have caps. So we would be consistent with the 32 cities that don't have a cap. No matter how large the development is, the fee still applies. And finally, the $2 million project threshold. There'd be no fees on any project below $2 million. 11 cities have a threshold much lower than that. Some have it all the way down to $50,000. So if you're doing anything over $50,000, you're already paying to the fee. The one for El Segundo would be starting at $2 million, which really be the most business friendly of the whole bunch. And speaking of that, how much money would you expect to get? This was put together by Sam Lee based on last 10 years worth of development in the city. And looking at if you had a threshold, fee starts at $500,000, $750,000, $1 million, or $2 million. And at that threshold, it would bring in about close to $700,000 a year available for the cultural development program. So the way it works, 1% fee and new development, commercial and industrial. Also, there are going to be endowments, bequests, grants, donations also go into this pooled account managed by the city, separate for the arts. It is not part of the general fund. And also for art on a developer's own property. If you own the property, you want to have the art on your own property. It's also 1%. It's flat 1%. And as the proposals come in, either proposals for an art project or an idea either are developed by the Arts and Cultural Development Committee, or artists come in, people come with ideas that they want to have funded. That would be reviewed by the City Council, would approve the overall annual budget for expenditure for the arts, but not necessarily every single project. If you're a developer, you would be required to hire a professional art consultant, somebody who really knows how to manage an art project. You're not just kind of wondering, what do I do, what do I do? And the concept that you would develop as a private developer would be approved by the ACC. And finally, when these projects are approved, the last thing is, the projects are funded through this special fund for the arts. Now, having answered, we think, those concerns, the final one is that what would the thing ultimately accomplish? What are you going to do with this cultural development fund? And as you can see, think, what it'll accomplish? There it is. Public art tends to be in people's minds, it's like that sculpture sitting out in the plaza someplace, or yet another mural. And really, this Cultural Development Fund proposes something much larger, which you call enhancing community. For example, creating art events, especially on weekends, because the hotel occupancies are kind of down on weekends. Special events that would occur over 2 days. It would be attracting visitors, getting residents involved, make more fun, more interest, more lively day and night. Special events, not just the sculpture in the park. Also bringing the night to life. Even with the string lights over the intersections. When you go downtown, walk around El Segundo, it's kind of dark at night. And if you're going to have new lighting, this fund would fund artistically designed lighting that would not only make things brighter, but also make it more interesting, more exciting. Even industrial can be lit up and be fantastic. Also making the everyday things extraordinary. Bus shelters, benches, canopies, all the amenities you tend to have in a city anyway. With a little bit of money kicked in to assist through this Cultural Development Fund, they can become works of art in themselves throughout the city. And also, bringing the city to the sea. Now, last year, I think it was, at ESMO, they had a show that was called El Segundísimo. It was about big ideas for El Segundo. And there was a sign-in thing where you could write, what do you think would be a great idea for El Segundo, visitors? And the majority, the biggest one was, can you link downtown to the ocean? We're like a beach city, and you go to the beach, you look up, you see a hill. What's going on? You look down, you don't see it. One of the things that could be done over the years with the Cultural Development Fund is to gradually have art installations, landscape installations along that Grand Avenue path to make that connection, finally. And the last one, education and entertainment. So it's not just physical things, it's also events, it's lectures, it's TED Talks in El Segundo, Shakespeare in the Park, music festivals, and so on, which the more of that thing you have, the more people want to come, the more they want to live here, the more they want to build a business here, the more interesting the place becomes. And so that's the reason why we're asking for your support. We think it supports the growth of the city, making it a more fun and pleasant place to live, and attracting younger people especially, and people who are interested in the arts and art-related businesses. So that's why we're asking for the support. And that's the story. Thank you.
And we have been talking about the ACC's idea for over a year and think that it's really time for the city to define its relationship to public art. So just to make it clear, the city staff also respectfully recommends that you approve the revised cultural development ordinance tonight and that we move forward together.
Okay, so we're now, that's completed your presentation, correct? Yeah. So we're going to open the public hearing for any public input. Anyone that would like to say something on this topic now is a good time.
Good evening. My name is Brian Sweeney, and I live in Manhattan Beach, but I am a property owner and developer in El Segundo, and I'm the co-founder of ESMOA, the art laboratory at 208 Main Street. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this issue. I am in support of this ordinance to establish the Cultural Development Program. I'd like to thank staff for their agenda statement that was thoroughly and clearly outlines the reasons why City Council and all should be in favor of establishing this ordinance. I thank them for their recommendation that City Council adopt this ordinance. The way the world works is that large corporations are forced by their controllers with a short-term mindset to cut budgets wherever possible to squeeze out every nickel of profit for their shareholders. The first item always eliminated by the controllers is funding for cultural resources. The controllers say, why place a statue in front of the building when some grass will do just fine? These money men do not care of the community building that is realized when cultural resources enhance the environment, image, and character of the city. Grassroots and fundraising might work for small-scale art projects that individuals can undertake on their own with small donations, but only once, as they always will burn out. Grassroots and fundraising is not sustainable for a strong cultural arts movement. I've had many chats with nice people in the big corporations over the past years asking for even a few dollars of donation to support the arts. While enthusiastic initially, the answer is always disappointing. There is little to no funding for cultural resources available. The funding has to be generated as a fee line item in the project budget, and then the controllers will not be able to cut this out. Art is extremely successful for public relations of a city and for economic growth. A report on the TV or the internet about a new art project in El Segundo can generate publicity to the city that will cause people to think of El Segundo in a different way. A way that will cause them to say, I want to visit El Segundo, work there, live in, or relocate my firm to El Segundo. Bringing more awareness of El Segundo through the art and cultural movement will bring more tourists to El Segundo. More tourists will mean more successful hotels, more hotel tax dollars, and more revenue for the city. Besides being a main sponsor of ESMOA, I have developed a few projects in El Segundo, and I've invested funds in beautifying the buildings with art. On the old cement block post office at 200 Main, you will now see a wonderful drawing of the veins of the adjacent sycamore tree painted on the white plaster of the building. This drawing has aided in the revitalization of the south end of Main Street. In addition, I hired graffiti artists to paint the walls surrounding the old fire station at El Segundo Boulevard in Nash. And these artworks have brought life to this corner and brought more customers for the tenants. 36 neighboring cities have enacted art and public place ordinances, and our city needs to become in tune with the creative economy and nurture the creative arts through supporting this ordinance. I thank you very much for your vote in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney.
Good evening, Mayor Persick, members of the City Council. My name is Marcia Hansen. I will first say personally I'm a big supporter of the arts. I have 4 kids who draw on their math homework every night. Beautiful drawings. They will all end up in the art fields. But tonight I am representing the Chamber of Commerce, the El Segundo Chamber. Over the past several months, the El Segundo Chamber's Government Affairs Committee has heard presentations and participated in several discussions regarding the proposed Cultural Development Fund fee. We appreciate the thoughtful work Melissa McCollum and the ACC has spent on the issue. Recently, the Government Affairs Committee deliberated taking a position on the proposed fee as revised following the July 2019 council meeting. Our committee felt the revised proposal is not aligned with the notion of El Segundo being a business-friendly city. The fee sets up an ongoing revenue stream for artwork on-site or public art, as well as supporting performances, events, etc. Such a fee establishes a revenue stream that is not proportional to the need. There are more pressing needs within the city. As stated at the September 17, 2019 City Council meeting, the city has significant budget deficits in the near future, including costs for infrastructure, safety, CalPERS, etc., and will face their first structural deficit in 18 months. We believe the cultural development fee is not the right way to achieve the city's highest goals. Also stated in the September 17, 2019 City Council meeting by Joe Lilio, TOT is the largest revenue source in El Segundo at 20%, followed by business license tax at 16%. These numbers demonstrate that the business community is already significantly contributing toward the city's general fund. In addition, the business community is actively engaged as they robustly support the community through events and special projects via sponsorships and donations. We are very fortunate to have such an incredibly supportive business community in El Segundo. The Chamber encourages the arts and cultural movement to continue in El Segundo through fundraising. We suggest specific projects to be proposed to the business community and other community supports for sponsorships, involvement, and funding. There are many successful examples of this model working in El Segundo in the past, including mural projects, the recent mural at El Segundo Library, community events, including the recent fair on Richmond Street, and the LA Street Festival. The October Paint It Pink project is another great example of a local business bringing other organizations together to support a cause as they promote their business while also creating a wonderful display of art. These projects provide business and community groups the opportunity to promote their organizations and demonstrate their support of El Segundo. We feel efforts such as these are clearly effective and aligned with our city's values to remain the most business-friendly city while maintaining the outstanding quality of life in our community. It is not unusual for a new or existing business to reach out to the Chamber regarding organizations to champion in El Segundo, volunteer opportunities, community events to attend and support, etc. We learn about their marketing and philanthropic goals and we help connect them to local organizations that meet those goals, which may include supporting the arts, supporting education, STEM, robotics, health and wellness, beautification, environmental causes, organizations such as CASE. The list goes on and on and on. The Chamber feels that our local business and companies should be encouraged to support our community. However, their support should be able to be aligned with what best meets their philanthropic goals. The Chamber encourages culture arts in El Segundo and the goal of contributing to achieving the city enjoyable. However, based on the revised Cultural Arts Development Fund proposal outlined, the Chamber is opposed to the cultural development fee. We thank Melissa McCollum and members of the Arts and Cultural Advisory Committee for their vision for El Segundo, and we hope to continue to support that vision through community sponsorships and support for specific projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hanson.
Hi, my name is Joanna Bowe. I'm a local resident. I don't have a fancy title. I don't even have a speech, just a couple notes on my iPhone. I wanted to speak in support of the Cultural Development Fund. Actually, before I just put my 3- and 4-year-old to bed so I could run out here and make a comment in support of it, they were trying to ask me more questions so I'd stay longer, as you guys know how that works. And they said, why do we have art on our walls? Because we have a ton on our walls. And I said, because it's beautiful, it makes you think, and it enhances the environment. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to do with the Cultural Development Fund in a way that's sustainable, that doesn't rely on goodwill or folks thinking it will increase their bottom line for their own reasons. And I think it's just the right thing for the community that I've invested in and that I want to spend many more decades in. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna.
Hello, I'm Julie Hollop, also a resident. 2.5-year-old, 5.5-year-old, same situation at home. Snuck out on bedtime to get here in support. I think El Segundo is an incredible place to live, and I really, truly value all the artistic opportunities that our children and adults get to experience. And I, again, as Joanna said, would love it to be part of our city as opposed to something that happens in our city, something that we see every day, and not just something that is an event 1 or 2 or 3 times a year that relies on philanthropy of corporations, because I just don't think that happens enough. So I'm hoping this goes through, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie.
Good evening. Mark Reiner, El Segundo resident. I'm all for the arts. I loved art when I was in school. But as we all know, art is subjective. The fact that, I'm curious that the drawing on the old post office, I'm curious, how many, does anybody here have an estimate on how much tourism was brought here because of that wall? I've seen other things done at the Museum of Art, which I find offensive, morally offensive, and passively all right. But the fact that we're going to, basically, this works out to be extortion to new companies coming in. There's a big, huge building being built over on the east side. I think it's about 10 stories tall. I guarantee you that's costing more than $2 million. And they have to be told to either put an art display in their building or pay up. Well, I don't think that's such a good idea. That sounds, like I say, it sounds like extortion. If they want to give money to the arts, that's great. If I want to give money to the arts, that's great also. But we're just up here talking about how there's no finances going on, and now we're saying, oh, we're going to do this to the businesses, and that's going to bring in more money. It's not. It doesn't. They had a big, and it's not just art. We're talking about cultural events, like maybe a gay pride parade down Main Street. Who knows? That's art. I'm sure there's probably people in town that would think that's great. I'm sure there's culture going on in different cities that don't reflect what we have here, and I'm sure our culture here does not reflect what other cities think also. That's fine, because that's what life is all about. The fact that to put this in another version is that, well, sure, we're going to charge businesses to come in here for art, and we're going to tax them for it. Well, I'm sure everybody here is really interested in a healthy lifestyle. So why don't we also tack on an extra 0.5% to make sure every company that comes in here will have to put in vegan food. And if they don't, then they'll have to pay a fee to the city because they don't want to serve vegan food at their gas station or whatever they have built. Okay? It may sound ridiculous, but this falls into the same process. Another interesting thing that was brought up earlier in public communication, and I'm not going to talk about it yet, is that somebody mentioned that why are people from Manhattan Beach sticking their nose into El Segundo and to what we do and what we vote on? But we just had the same thing happen here a few minutes ago. A resident from Manhattan Beach is pushing something. And the fact that the library is supposed to be tied into this and the people of the museum are tied into it. Also, there are members sitting on the board, sitting here on our council, who are board members of the Museum of Art. You can have anything you want in El Segundo, but when you start telling businesses what they can do and what they can't do, whether it's art, whether it's clean air, or whether it's what kind of food you eat, that is the slippery slope. And the little presentation where this will make El Segundo a business-friendly city. I've heard for years that El Segundo was the most business-friendly city. Did we slip in the ratings somewhere, and now we need to do this to get ourselves built back up? So I'm really not for this, and I agree with the lady from the chamber that art is suggestive. We should go ahead and have people give money. If they want to give money, great. If they don't, fine. But don't tell people they have to do. And like I say, I'm a resident, so it doesn't matter to me because nothing's going to happen. But see, I also think about the bigger picture, like the businesses in El Segundo. I'm concerned about them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Here I am again, Pat Boydston, coming up here to bug you a little bit. First of all, I'm very shocked to hear somebody coming in from another city, it gets a different reception than another person that came in from another city. I'm not opposed to hearing all these different ideas, but I think, we need to be fair. I'm a very concerned citizen. Like I said, I've worked on degrees in psychology, I've worked on my postgraduate, postdoc. I think we need to take a step back and think about what's going on in the city. If you want art, take a walk at night, take a walk in the afternoon and see people on the bus benches sleeping. See them wandering around the city. I'm not hearing anything at the city council, and I admit I'm new to this, so, but I'm hearing we need more money, but I'm hearing we need to spend more money, but I'm not hearing anything about the people that are sleeping on the bus benches, that are walking around at night, that are standing in the middle of a street, giving speeches to God knows whomever, or lying in the middle of the street. So I think you need to, I don't know what I'm trying to tell you, but I'm concerned about the spending. The mural in the library room, the meeting room downstairs, I don't know how much that costs. I heard it was $10,000. You're saying they need to get bathrooms fixed, so why do you spend, if that's true, $10,000, why don't you fix the bathroom? Be pragmatic like we have to be at home. So I appreciate your listening to me. Just please, I am a concerned citizen. The artwork that was depicted here to me is garish. We're a small town. If you bombard the city with all that artwork, I don't know what it's going to look like. And design less is more. Anyway, thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mrs. Boydston.
Kathy Benudis, resident of El Segundo. I too am totally against this. This is not how we operate here in America. We don't force people to do things. There are tons of people that have a lot more money than brains who will pay millions of dollars or at least hundreds of thousands of dollars for artwork. Why don't those people contribute more to the culture and the artwork? I don't ever hear anything about that. Why do you force companies, or maybe even after the company, you get this passed for the companies, maybe now it's going to be everybody has to paint their house, they have to put artwork in their front yard or something. Where does it stop demanding that people do something they don't want to do? That's not how we're supposed to operate here in the United States of America. This is a free country. Think about it.
Thank you, Kathy.
Hello, I'm Jay Heschler, El Segundo resident. Let me try to give you a different perspective, if I may, please. I work all over the country, work with developers, I work with cities and municipalities. Of course, we've got a unique situation here in El Segundo, and I understand some of the residents who've been here a long time and are not comfortable with change. I understand that those can be difficult things to do. But the truth is, a city enriched with public art and cultural amenities is a city that attracts business. That's the truth. That's the premise of this program, and the ordinance before you creates a way to make our great city even greater. It's also familiar territory for many private developers and municipalities, so don't think of this as an economic barrier to the city of El Segundo. The Urban Land Institute estimates there are more than 200 cities and towns around the United States that have a Percent for Arts program, and as you heard from the presentation, they include many of our neighboring communities. In fact, this year marks the 60th anniversary of Philadelphia's Percent for Arts program. 60 years it's been happening, and the arts program there is wonderful. And some of the biggest advocates for this program are developers. In the words of a prominent Scottsdale developer, he says, "Putting art in new developments is smart because it creates life and vibrancy. That adds value to our projects." Another developer in Boise said, "Public art elevates the community, making it safer, healthier, and more fun to live in. It reminds people that this is a place worthy of living in and preserving." In a city where big ideas take off, public art and culture encourages pedestrian activity and contributes to the experience of our visitors and residents. It's a huge ingredient in the secret sauce of successful placemaking. I believe it is our intention to attract the best and brightest creative minds, makers, and doers, and they will demand the best and brightest cultural experiences. Art and culture make life better. I'd like to see this ordinance passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hessler.
Good evening, council members. Mike Rotolo, resident of El Segundo and also business owner of an El Segundo business. I think I have a unique perspective. I wear several hats and have worn several hats. Past president of the Chamber of Commerce, resident, almost 30 years. I'm a general contractor, commercial general contractor. I've done a lot of building in El Segundo for large corporations, small developers, medium-sized developers, large developers. And I'm also the chair of the Capital Improvement Advisory Committee. So a lot of these comments have touched me, and I understand where everyone's coming from. The way I look at it, I do work with developers. I haven't seen any developers up here saying that they don't think this fee is fair. We build in several cities, and what I've seen are the fees in El Segundo for the development fees and the building permit fees are lower than a lot of cities that I've seen. I think they're fair. I think if you keep them fair, I don't think this 1% cost is a giant burden on the developers. I, as a general contractor, as we budget things, we're always, looking at budgets. But I also see in the flexibility of your plan, where developers can put elements on their buildings, like we saw a photo of the Moose building, or they get an artist, and they can create and make part of their building attractive. They can utilize that fee to enhance their building. It doesn't have to be a piece of art. It doesn't have to be sent, to the city for a fund to be used later. They can be creative and incorporate that into elements of their building without just having it be the sole cost of that piece of art. I commend Mr. Sweeney for what he's brought to El Segundo with ESMOA, and knowing what we had before and what we have now, I see a huge change in the culture of our city, in the business and the residential section, with people vibrant and excited about what they see here and these art walks and how many people they attract. And I'm excited about the prospect of what we could have if we had a little bit more to do that with. On the capital improvement side, I know as well as you do, there are very limited funds for capital improvements. So there's no way that some of these projects and things we've talked about possibly could be done with your capital improvement budget. So I think this adds an element that can help with those type of things to enhance facilities for everyone in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rotolo.
Hi, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Mark Knight. I'm a resident of El Segundo, and I live just across the street on Holly Avenue. In addition to that, I'm a member of the Arts and Culture Council. I just wanted to address a couple points that were raised earlier. Scott Nickel pointed out that El Segundo is a city on the rise, and we are. You can walk around this place and you can see businesses popping up everywhere. You can see Smoky Hollow being redeveloped. You can see alternative meat products and all sorts of things getting produced here. In fact, I would venture a guess that one of the only things that you cannot produce in El Segundo is more land. And we are built up. This is a full city. We are edge to edge, just packed. And we're packed with creativity and businesses. And we are competing for some of the best people in Los Angeles County and around the world. But because we're fully developed, art cannot be placed on bare land. We cannot build the city that's going to bring in the Silicon Beach creative economy if we don't have that art. And what this does is it goes to that line item in the budget. It formalizes the process of redevelopment so that art becomes a part of El Segundo, not just now, but over the next 20 years, so that as we develop, as I invest and hopefully one day buy a home in this city instead of just renting, we will have this vibrant community around us. We can get there. Now, it was also mentioned that you can do this through donations and fundraising and community efforts, and that is true. You can do a lot, but you can't do everything. There's a limit to how much you can fundraise and how much you can tap any given business interest. And what this does, the percent for arts enables citizens, average citizens such as myself who don't have a ton of means, to have input in that process, not just the people with the ability to donate. It democratizes the process of beautifying this community, and that process of bringing all of the citizens in to either run for seats on the Arts Council or vote in elections, to participate in these public discussions, that is critical. This is our city, and we have to address it as a community, and this is how we do that. So I would like to just finish this by saying, you know, I met a couple, young couple, they were visiting from Europe, and they were camped out on the summit of Mount Baldy. And they'd come to LA and they said, you know, we had two things we wanted to do in LA. We wanted to climb Mount Baldy, because Mount San Antonio is huge and it's beautiful, it's just over 10,000 feet, and who wouldn't want to do that? And we're going to go to the Art Walk. That brought them here. This was the only other stop they had planned on their trip, and art did that. So thank you for your consideration of the measure, and I hope we can get your votes as well.
Thank you, Mark.
Good evening. My name is Tara Esquivel. I am the Executive Director of the American Youth Symphony, which as of August 1st is headquartered at 2301 Rosecrans in El Segundo. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and the American Youth Symphony as an introduction and hopefully to build a little credibility. I grew up on a farm in Missouri. I loved music and I made the big jump to move to the wonderful city of Kansas City, Missouri to study music. After I got my music degree, I waited tables and figured out that it was going to be hard to get a job. So I went back to school and I got a master's degree in arts management from Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My program was housed in the School of Public Policy, and it was there that I took my first economics course. I fell in love with economics and I was good at it. And putting my two loves together, I discovered the specialized area of study called cultural economics, which is the study of the economic impact of the arts on society. I spent a semester studying cultural economics at the University of Bologna. I've published articles in international academic journals about the subject, but because nobody really wants to talk about it, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about my love for this tonight. The American Youth Symphony was established 55 years ago at UCLA by Maestro Meli Meta. It is a pre-professional orchestra providing advanced training and performance opportunities to the most talented young musicians in Southern California. We never collect any audition fees or tuitions for participation, and we actually pay stipends to our musicians so that participation is truly based on merit and not financial means. Most of our concerts are free to attend in an effort to build audiences for the art form. We also provide free community performances in community spaces like places of worship, hospitals, and we have a 2-week residency going at LAX right now. We have a teaching artist program called Share a Stand that supports music teachers in public schools, and we have started conversations with some of your fine El Segundo music teachers to see if this is of interest. Finally, we have a citizen musician program which teaches musicians how to be engaged and involved in their communities, and we address current topics through music such as homelessness, gender representation, and environmental justice. I chose to move our office to El Segundo in August. First, because all of our full-time staff live in the South Bay area and commuting is an important consideration. I was also interested when I read about the city designing a creative district in Smoky Hollow, and as I learned about the vibrant programming at ESMOA. The recognition of the creative district in Smoky Hollow implied that the creative industries are beneficial to the local economy and the community. However, I'd like to say that the creative industries go beyond film, fashion, and tech industries, and that the heart of creativity truly lies in the arts. If you are to support local arts organizations through a public art and cultural development fund fee, the impact would be felt locally by the staff and artists who make their living this way, like myself, and everyone that spends their time here. Infusing creativity into the identity of the city makes El Segundo a desirable and attractive place to live, visit, and do business. Making this a policy provides ongoing support, not just one-time project support, which are inefficient to operate. If you would like hard data and evidence that investments in the arts deliver both direct and indirect ROI to cities like yours, I encourage you to peruse the hundreds of reports called the Arts and Economic Prosperity Reports, which are published by and available on the website of Americans for the Arts. I brought a couple from Laguna Beach and Thousand Oaks because they're nearby, but there are dozens of reports available on that website. They outline revenue generated by the arts economic activity, revenue generated directly for local governments, and the economic impact of the economic impact of spending that arts patrons spend outside of the costs of ticket events, such as parking, dinner and drinks, and shopping, which generate tax revenue. There are dozens and dozens of studies outlining the economic impact of the arts on cities like yours and the ROI that municipal investments return. I see it firsthand every day as the director of a nonprofit. I really hope that you will vote to support this policy, and I hope that you will learn more about the American Youth Symphony. Thanks.
Thank you, Tara.
Mayor Pro Tem, council members, my name is Brett Moore. I'm a resident of El Segundo. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for your service. I know this is often a thankless job, and I very much appreciate all you do for the city of El Segundo. Yesterday I was down in San Diego. I was having lunch with a group of people, and this is the first time that we had met. And of course the topic of conversation comes up, oh, where are you from? And so I tell them I'm from El Segundo. And I just get blank stares back in response. And so I go through my rigmarole. I explain, oh, well, you know, it's this city, it's by LAX, it's great, it's near the beach, and they just had never heard of this place. And, you know, they're in San Diego, they're not far. And my point is that this council has the opportunity right now to turn this town into a place that people know. This city right now stands at the threshold of a fantastic opportunity. We have a revitalized Smoky Hollow district that is just up and coming. And all this city council has to do is to vote to support the arts. That's all that it has to do. And so I just wanted to express that my support for the 1% for the arts, and I hope you guys make the right choice today this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any other public comments? Okay, do I have a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, council discussion?
Why do I always have to go
Yeah,
first?
you don't have to go first. Don, would you like to go first?
I'll go first. What action is anticipated by the council tonight related to this public hearing now that it's concluded? What are the possibilities?
Absolutely. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, what's on the agenda is introduction of the ordinance. Obviously, the council, if it's not inclined to introduce the ordinance, we wouldn't bring it back, or if you want to make changes to it, we could hear what those changes are and then bring it back at a future meeting. So those are the options available to the council.
All right, I would like to introduce it. There's no vote on that, right? Just bring it back?
No, as long as there's one council member that introduces it, I can read the title and then.
Can we discuss it a bit and then have you ring that bell?
Yeah.
Scott, would you like to say some words?
I spent 6 years on the Planning Commission. Many projects came across the Planning Commission's desk, and there were always requirements. And one of the sheets that I always chuckled about when it would be up there on that screen was the requirement for landscaping on projects and the types of trees. And there's probably 2 or 3 pages on every set of plans that get submitted to the city for landscaping requirements. This is requirements of adding green to these developments. And in thinking about this and this arts fee and the threshold and watching these developments that went up, on every single one of those plans, the other things that we saw on there were art. There's always some art component in major developments. Think about Plaza El Segundo. You have multiple art installations at Plaza El Segundo, including the fountain in the corner with these beautiful metal sculptures, and then there was this collaborative effort where a bunch of kids made their handprints on tiles. My kids were not born yet, so they're not there. But there was art there. You go to The Point, another newer development, and you have their play structure, or an area where kids like to play. It's a lifeguard tower, and it's painted abstract like the lifeguard towers are painted about a decade ago. They have fountains. They have a foosball table. Why? Because art and culture and life, it brings people together, and it enhances the overall just experience. And so I'm with Dawn on introducing this. I think it's great. I'm very happy that that Ms. McCullough listened to our direction from the last time around and raised this threshold. I felt that the lower threshold would have impacted some of the smaller developments in Smoky Hollow. That these are small incubator type companies that are just trying to get off the ground, and they're not the type that can absorb this fee. And on smaller sites, it's really hard to incorporate art, and so I felt that would have been more of the case where they would have just paid the fee. And it's not that I don't want them to pay the fee, and I do not want us to have a pool of money to work off of, but I just feel that the larger corporations, when we have buildings selling in this town for, $30, $40, $50 million, these are corporations that can absorb, this percentage that can ultimately, it will likely go back on their site, but the culture of town, the life in town will only benefit from it. So I'm with Dr. Brand on supporting this.
Chris,
You don't hear
anything?
me say that often, do you?
I think first I was stung a bit by the comment about the people sleeping on benches. Just, I know it's non sequitur to this, but we spent a lot of time on it. About 10% of our patrol officers are trained to be community liaison and get those people into treatment and work on that. So please, I know we're not speaking about it tonight, but we hear you about people sleeping and wandering and those sorts of things, the unsheltered and the homeless. It's near and dear to my heart. We spent a lot of time with the regional governments working on it. But to this specifically, we've also had a number of meetings talking about the sort of tangential economic effects we get from bringing these sorts of things in and adding visual spaces and adding foot traffic in ways that feeds a broader business community. So I know that wasn't laid up in this part of the presentation, so people who weren't here for that piece, there's a lot of sort of the nuts and bolts of economics to that we've covered. Also, that our fee structure for businesses in our pool of sort of competitor cities, as is laid out in the staff report, we vary between 56 and 142% less on total fees, even inclusive of this. So that's the sunny side of my spiel on this. I will say that to your comment about there's already art baked into a number of developments as an aesthetic choice by developers, I would hope if this gets enacted that the presumption of an art council, when a developer shows up and says, this is the statue I'm putting up and it's Pac-Man eating a Rubik's Cube, that the presumption, tie goes to the runner. We're not there to tell them, and if it conveniently looks like their company logo, go forth and do great things. I don't think that we should be up there delineating with an overbearing sense of what the aesthetic character of something that they select to spend their money on. But to that end, I'm incredibly sensitive and sympathetic to the idea of forced philanthropy. And this is where I will put the big Debbie Downer part of this on, is that the city already spends a great deal of money on things that can be categorized as public art. And money for this, while we might conceive of a giant fist like at the center of Detroit or a piece of statuary, I would presume of $600,000, a significant amount of that will immediately be absorbed by things like the replacement of the sign into the main part of the city, concerts in the park, things that we are art walks, which we spend $48,000 out of our marketing budget to. Those things are all pieces that will be applied as public art. So of a $600,000 budget, the idea that we're going to get a giant Detroit-style fist is probably a bit far-fetched. So I go to the Arts and Culture Committee with people who are far more artistic and certainly far more cultured than I, but I know that what the city spends its money on, And every dollar that can be outlaid from this pool of money onto something that is currently public art, and that we could spend that other dollar to our financial needs, is likely to happen. So that's probably depressing, but it's just the truth of how city economics work. Because we have needs that are far more structural of their nature, and we just spent a lot of time addressing the golf course piece of that as well. And God knows if we have to fund a special election, then this money will get eaten up very quickly. I do want to also touch on something very sensitive, that cities should not be in the business of public advocacy. So when it comes to the programs that we select, it's important for people to note that in that structure, there are 2 layers of approval to any program that goes on. So if there's an approval process where we decide we want to host a group that is participating in a given activity, that has to go through both, presumably, an arts council, and correct me if I'm wrong, but ultimately the city council for how those dollars are spent. So if it is something that has a whiff of divisive advocacy, I think it would get a very harsh reading at any council, because the last thing a city council wants to do is tear a town in half over something as a piece of art advocacy. So with all of those bleak things, I would also say that I was the one person here who was sort of a little bit surprised we did not want a cap, because if people want to put in 330,000 square feet of office space in an old F-18 production place, we should not be penalizing them by saying, surprise, we need $500,000 extra dollars for artwork. Nor should we tell them, in my view, that the piece of art that they're putting in their landscaping is not sufficient. So while I would generally really like the way this is structured, I like the way that we have exempted any sort of retrofitting. So if it's earthquake proofing, if it's disability, accessibility, if it's a safety piece and a factory equipment, those things do not count and are not subject to this fee. I think that's incredibly well chosen. I think the $2 million floor keeps us very, very, very competitive with our neighbors for business friendliness, and exempts the small businesses that are going to move in. And I think that is very helpful to keeping the vibrancy. I would like to see a cap on what we will assess to them. And I also want to disabuse us broadly of where this money will go, because it's going to go to things like, when we go up a week from Thursday in front of the South Bay Coalition of Governments and argue for our Park Place extension, and we have a giant roundabout that goes in there that is going to need something in the middle of it, that something in the middle is likely to be funded by something from this fund. That could be something awesome, but it's going to be probably funded from this and not come out of Ken Berkman's Public Works Fund. And certainly Metro is not going to fund it. So all of that long-winded spiel about the gloom and doom of art by Portuguese guys, sorry, from Kansas, I know the Missouri lady left, so we're the bleak side of the river. I would generally say that this is, hey, the free side, but bleak. I would say I'm open to, I would like to see a cap on the total spend. I like the way that it exempts all of the things that we want, all the things that we want to protect in terms of small businesses and the retrofits. But I also want people to be comfortable with where this money is going as well.
Thank you. I do want to say thank you to the ACC and the staff for really listening to the council and doing a lot of outreach to the community, to both the chamber, to the community, I know you reached out to the EDAC committee, a lot of committees, and a lot of work has gone into this, and I really want to thank Michael specifically especially for, putting a lot of time into this. It was a great presentation. It was very good, and I just really am thankful that people care about our city and want to ensure that we continue to enhance it. So at this time, City Attorney will read the ordinance by title only.
Yes, Madam Mayor Pro Tem. An ordinance amending Title 15 of the El Segundo Municipal Code establishing a public art or in-lieu fee requirement and a cultural development fund is now ready for introduction.
Who will introduce the ordinance?
I'm glad to yield to my colleague to my right. I'm already pretty infamous up here, so I don't need this. So if you want to introduce it, it's fine.
Infamous.
Yeah, pretty infamous.
I will gladly introduce this.
All right, a second reading and adoption of the ordinance is scheduled for November 19th, 2019. Thank you, everybody.
City Attorney, I have a question. If we want to introduce a cap or a change to this, can that happen in the intervening part, between now and the next meeting, or?
It can be brought up in the next meeting.
Okay.
And then depending on how complex that change would be, it can be read into the record, or if it's complex, we might recommend that you bring it back for a second reading. But we can't make any changes between now and second reading. We have to present what was introduced tonight. So changes can be made at the second reading.
Got it.
But we can't, staff does not have authority to make changes after it's been introduced.
Very well.
As is.
All right, so we'll
take a
bring,
2-minute break.
yeah, we're going to take a 2-minute break and bring Mr. Boyles back.
We are back in session, and we are on to item 13, the first reading and introduction of the ordinance amending Title 11 of the El Segundo Municipal Code related to customers' delinquent payments for city-provided water services in accordance with new state law requirements. And I think we have a presentation on this.
So, good evening, Mayor, City Council members. I'm going to have Juliana Demers from my office give the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Boyas, members of City Council. So this is proposed amendments for Title 11 of the Municipal Code, and they are being brought to you tonight to comply with a new state mandate, SB 998, which was approved by the governor in September 2018, giving the city up to February 2020 for compliance. So pretty much the amendments are to clarify and extend the delinquency process and the shut-off for the discontinuation of water service for non-payment of water bills. And so little highlights of the bill are, like a requirement for a written policy in multiple languages, provide some deferred or reduced payments when they comply with a low-income guideline that now needs to be uniform, like for all cities, and a couple of different ways of communicating and posting notices when discontinuation of service are going to be processed by the city. So that pretty much is what the amendments are related to.
Thank you, Juliana. Any questions? No?
I do have, related to the water bills. Can you now set up auto pay on your water bill?
You can set up, you don't set up auto pay via our website. You can set up an ACH debt. So you can just provide us with your information, and we will set up the auto draft from your bank account.
And are we looking to change that process in the future?
We are currently working on implementing a completely robust and innovative e-payment platform that will allow for set up payments, prepayments, and you can do, like once this is going on, probably online sometime later next year, and you will be able to set up those payments, auto drafts, pay by text, pay by email, and it's going to be a better e-payment platform.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So all we're doing here is coming into compliance with a law that's about ready to kick in. So at the risk of getting the delinquents mad at me, I'll agree to introduce this ordinance.
Thank you, Dr. Brand.
I gave the
Okay.
last one away.
We'll ask City Attorney to read.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, an ordinance amending El Segundo Municipal Code Title 11, Chapter 1 to modify water service disconnection procedures in accordance with state law is now ready for introduction.
I'll introduce.
And that ordinance will come back for second reading at the next meeting.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Dr. Brand. Item 14. I know you've got many different things to read here. Should I go ahead and read the first part of the language?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and then after council discussion, what we can do is I can read all of the titles in to the record so that the public is aware what's being introduced, and then we can have one of the council members, if you're agreeable, to introduce these ordinances.
Okay. Anyone opposed to that process? No. Okay. Waive first reading and introduce ordinances adopting 2019 California Building Code Volume 1 and 2 with amendments, 2019 California Residential Code with amendments, 2019 California Electrical Code, 2019 California Mechanical Code, 2019 California Plumbing Code, 2019 California Energy Code, 2018 International Property Maintenance Code, 2018 International Swimming Pool and Spa Code, 2019 California Fire Code with amendments, 2019 California Existing Building Code, 2019 California Green Building Standards Code, Earthquake Hazard Reduction in Existing Buildings, and 2018 Uniform Solar Energy and Hydronics Code. Okay, Sam Lee's going to come up and say a few words.
Good evening, good evening, Mayor Boyles and council members. So history tells us that building with the latest construction codes saves lives, makes up for better buildings. So every 3 years, all cities in California is required to adopt the latest construction codes. The ordinance before you accomplishes that. You'll notice that this ordinance is being handled a little bit differently than most of the other ordinances that we adopt. That's because state law requires that this ordinance be introduced at the first meeting tonight, and the formal public hearing will be held at the second meeting, which is being requested for November 19th. So at that meeting, there will be a formal presentation of the ordinance. We'll hear public comments from anyone at the public, and the council will be asked to vote on the ordinance, and if approved, the new codes will become effective on January 1st, 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. You're going to read them and then is that it for a presentation? Yes, okay. You'll read them and someone will introduce, correct?
Yes, that's correct,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor. So bear with me, there's 13 ordinances. So the first ordinance is an ordinance adopting the California Building Code 2019 edition and amending the CBC based on local climatic, topographical, and geological conditions, and amending the El Segundo Municipal Code to reflect such changes. The second ordinance is an ordinance adopting the California Residential Code 2019 edition and amending the CRC based on local climatic, topographic, and geological conditions, and amending the El Segundo Municipal Code to reflect such changes. An ordinance is the third ordinance is an ordinance amending the 2019 edition of the California Electrical Code and amending the El Segundo Municipal Code to reflect such adoption. The fourth ordinance for your consideration is an ordinance adopting the 2019 edition of the California Mechanical Code with amendments and amending the El Segundo Municipal Code to reflect such adoption. The fifth is the ordinance adopting the 2019 edition of the California Plumbing Code with amendments and amending the El Segundo Municipal Code to reflect such adoption. I think we now realize why Mark had me cover this portion of the meeting. And an ordinance adopting, the sixth ordinance is an ordinance adopting the 2019 edition of the California Energy Code and amending the El Segundo Municipal Code to reflect such adoption. The seventh ordinance is an ordinance adopting the 2018 edition of the International Property Maintenance Code with amendments and amending the El Segundo Municipal Code to reflect such adoption. The eighth is an ordinance adopting the 2018 edition of the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code and amending the El Segundo Municipal Code to reflect such adoption. The ninth is an ordinance adopting by reference the 2019 edition of the California Fire Code, Chapters 1, Divisions 2, 3, and 4, and Sections 503, 510, 807, 1103, and Appendix O of the International Fire Code 2018 edition, and amending these codes through express findings of local necessity. The 10th is an ordinance adopting the 2000 edition of the California Existing Building Code with amendments and amending the El Segundo Municipal Code to reflect such adoption. The 11th is an ordinance adopting the 2019 edition of the California Green Building Standards Code with amendments and amending the El Segundo Municipal Code to reflect such adoption. The 12th is an ordinance adopting Appendix 5, voluntary prescriptive provisions for seismic strengthening of cripple walls and sill plate anchorage of light wood frame residential buildings, voluntary earthquake risk reduction in wood frame residential buildings with soft, weak, or open front walls, and voluntary earthquake hazard reduction in existing concrete buildings, and amending the El Segundo Municipal Code to reflect such adoption. And finally, the 13th is an ordinance adopting the 2018 edition of the Uniform Solar Energy and Hydronics Code and amending the El Segundo Municipal Code to reflect such adoption. Those 13 ordinances are now ready for introduction.
Yes, thank you. Mr. King, would someone like to introduce those?
So moved.
Okay, Carol will introduce all 13. Thank you. So we'll hear again in 30 days at the public hearing?
The next regularly scheduled meeting is the public hearing for second reading and proposed adoption.
Thank you. All right, item 15 under, thank you, City Clerk. Adopt 3 resolutions calling for the General Municipal Election, requesting Los Angeles County Services, and adopting regulations for candidate statements for the March 3rd, 2020 General Municipal Election.
So just for the record, of the 3 resolutions, resolution number 1, we had a correction to. I believe you received them. But in section 1, section A, we changed the Sentence 2, called a general municipal election to be held on March 3rd, 2020 for the purpose of the election of 3 council members, a city clerk, a city treasurer, whose terms will expire after the March 2024 general municipal election and receipt of the results. And then in section 2, we remove the last sentence, for the purpose of the election of 3 council members, a city clerk, and a city treasurer. And David will read them for you, and if you have questions, of course, I can answer them before then.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. King?
So these are resolutions. There's 3 resolutions. I don't have to read the title of the, well, actually, I guess I do. A resolution of the City Council of the City of El Segundo requesting the Board of Supervisors of the County of LA to consolidate a general municipal election to be held on March 3rd, 2020, with the statewide primary election to be held on the date pursuant to the Elections Code. That's the first resolution.
Would you like us to vote individually? And ask questions individually?
Oh, yeah, of course. If you want to ask questions, that's fine.
I think Councilman Pimentel has a
I have a question about consolidation per the election code. Are there any other optional dates? I think that we heard some discussion earlier that we may have some special agenda items for an election. So if there was a referendum being put forth, is there an election later on in the year between November and March that we could consolidate to? That way we wouldn't have to have a special election if there's a referendum, right?
Right. You can hold a special election if the county were to approve it in November of 2020. Otherwise, you can wait till the regular municipal election again in 2022 of March.
But we couldn't have, but there's no intervening election statewide that we could consolidate to? There's
not that
nothing
not that we're aware of at this time. There could, we haven't looked into it, but could be one in June of 2020. We did not have time today to call and check on that for you, but.
That's my only question. I mean, would it, actually, I will follow that up. Would it behoove us to find out if there is one in June that we might find more palatable if we have other election items?
I don't necessarily want to extend my term. I doubt Dr. Brand does either.
I don't think they can extend their term at this. I mean, we can't change this at this time.
No, but I mean, California decided to walk away from the June election to be more of a player in the presidential primary, so moved it up to March, and so we're going to get March instead of June. I don't think June's an option anymore, but check it, you know.
This was already brought to council and voted on for March 2020.
We can, however, have a special election between March and November if we can find the resources to conduct such election, right?
Sure.
Which might be more difficult knowing that everyone's moving to the county alignment cycle.
I was just looking to save money by consolidating, but that's.
Yeah, I get you.
Pimentel, you're asking about like legislation, not officers.
That's correct.
Okay. In other words, you're not talking about the election of officers, but some sort of special measure.
Yeah, well, if there was a special election, would it make sense to delay this into a special election? I didn't know if that was feasible or even possible. But that was the nature of my question.
At this point, I mean, this was established.
Because the ship has already sailed. We already voted on this once, right? So,
yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that the council can't revisit it. I mean, this is really just about the election of officers in March. The 3 seats on the council, and then the city treasurer and city clerk.
Very well.
So
hopefully that answers your
there
question.
was an election in some places, Linwood, Rancho Palos Verdes, Hermosa Beach, November 2019. Now, that's not going to continue to fly because that's an odd year. So they're going to need to get to a November and an even year and adjust their terms off a year or something, right? And you have to do that by
2022.
2022.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The only exception that I was aware of was certain jurisdictions that have a really high voting percentage.
Yeah.
There was a threshold established by state law, and El Segundo fell below that threshold, which is why we had to adjust the election.
Got it.
Okay, any other comments or questions for the first resolution? Okay, I'll move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It is 5-0. Okay, second one.
Mr. Mayor, the second resolution is a resolution calling and giving notice of the holding of a general municipal election to be held on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020, with a consolidated primary election for the election of 3 members of the City Council, City Clerk, and City Treasurer pursuant to Elections Code 1301.
Okay, any questions or comments on this one?
I'll move for approval.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
And the third resolution is a resolution of the City Council of the City of El Segundo adopting regulations for candidates for elective office pertaining to candidate statements submitted to the voters at an election to be held on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Any comments or questions before
Is
we vote?
that around the number of words you can have in your ballot statement and things
Yeah.
like that, right?
Yeah, 200 words.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? 5-0. Okay, thank you. Item 16 under City Treasurer. Proposed ballot measure for the March 3rd, 2020 General Municipal Election to convert the elected office of the City Treasurer to an appointed position. And I see our City Treasurer at the mic.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. I actually have a presentation, brief one for you. So tonight I'm presenting my own initiative for you to consider, which is to place on the March 3rd, 2020 ballot to change the elected treasurer position into an appointed position. So first I'm going to talk about kind of the mechanics of how that would work, and then I'm going to go through some survey data of local agencies and those that have elected treasurers and those that have public treasurers. And then I'm going to kind of talk to you about why I feel this would be an important initiative for you to consider. So how does the ballot measure work? So the state code or the state law requires that you have a treasurer, either appointed or elected. The ballot measure would go concurrently with the elected position being open. So you have to have both at the same time in order to make the conversion. So someone would, if someone ran for office and was elected and the ballot measure passed, then they would serve the full term if they chose to do so, and upon the conclusion of their term, the position would convert to appointed. So this is just some quick survey data. It's just a sampling. So right now, of the agencies surveyed, 32% or 11 agencies have elected treasurers. 23 have appointed treasurers, so that's an overwhelming majority. Most of those have the position combined with the finance director. It's a very common structure. It's even in Long Beach, City of Los Angeles. Some have appointed treasurers in some of the larger cities, but overwhelmingly in public agencies, the treasurer is appointed. So here's just a picture of some of those cities for you to look at. So why do I want you to consider this initiative? First and foremost, an elected treasurer in the City of El Segundo, the only requirement's that you have to be 18 years old and a resident. That's it. You don't need to have any qualifications. You don't need a high school degree. You don't need a college degree. You don't need any experience whatsoever to be responsible for managing the city's $100 million portfolio. Second, right now we have 2 financial functions that work side by side, 2 department heads that typically work collaboratively and work together. By getting rid of the elected treasurer position and combining the function with the finance director, you're going to save money and you're going to become more efficient. You're going to provide oversight of these critical financial activities under one position. By having an appointed treasurer, be it the finance director or another means, you're going to seek somebody that's qualified to do the functions that are required in public treasury management. And in my opinion, some of these minimum qualifications, and this would be minimum, would be several years' experience, understanding cash flow forecasting, how to manage multiple banking relationships, fundamentals of fixed income investing, internal controls, auditing, debt financing, and treasury technology. So I do want to kind of explain to you I came to this position as the city treasurer because I was appointed. The incumbent resigned very short into his term. I was having lunch with my friends who are bankers, who at the time for the city of El Segundo, I didn't know, who let me know what was happening. And so I, along with several community members, filled out an application, provided my resume, got interviewed by 5 city council members, and I believe Carl Jacobson is right there in the back. I had to demonstrate my skills, knowledge, and abilities to become your appointed treasurer. And you selected me unanimously 5-0 because I was qualified and I had over 10 years of experience. So I would really like for you to consider to bring this back as a ballot measure. This would come back 2 weeks from now if you are so doing so. And I thank you so much for your time, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Binder. Yes, Dr. Brand.
In our history in El Segundo, have we ever had an appointed treasurer?
I don't know. I know I
Should
was
ask my
appointed.
wife? Not the history room.
I believe the position was created in 1918.
Well, that's about the front end of it all, yeah. And that was elected there. Okay, probably not then.
So from
She's
information
working on city attorneys now. She probably didn't want to work on the city treasurers. David?
I actually, as part of this, I looked at the resolutions and I found the 1918 one where they asked for the vote of the city treasurer, so, yeah.
Any other questions for Krista?
I would just volunteer that it speaks highly of the treasurer to put enough weight on the professional acumen needed for this task to say that the methodology that was used to install treasurers in the past is no longer suited to what we want. And I think I certainly commend you. It takes a lot for somebody to get up and say, get rid of my job and move it somewhere else. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll say when this idea was first presented, my knee-jerk reaction was, as an elected, I should never make a decision to eliminate a fellow elected. After discussion with you and just understanding the criteria involved and really what's at stake, I'm in support of this.
Thank you.
I mean, I hate to say that I'm contradicting something that I said earlier in this meeting about taking this to the voters. But this is the legal procedure. We can't make this decision on our own, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilman Nichol.
No, thank you, Krista, for thinking about the city, and really, I know you've done an amazing job with our funds, and you have the expertise, and you see what's needed as far as expertise to continue this trend, and you're correct. Being just a person without even a college degree could actually take this position, and we have a lot of money at stake. So for the city, so I think it's important that we ensure that we have the right person in place.
Right. Thank you.
If we have a high school senior run for this,
fantastic.
They could win.
They don't need to be in high school.
Underwhelming high school sophomore running.
I also want to commend you, Krista. I know that when you got into when you were appointed, there was a lot of work that was needed to be done. A lot of the investment decisions weren't within guidelines, and so I appreciate everything you've done. I think we were very fortunate to have someone that does this for a living day in, day out, just north of us. So we're very fortunate. You've done a great work for us, so thank you for bringing this forward, and thank you for bringing on Dino as well. So.
Oh, no, thank you. And thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
All right. We are going to, we need to vote on
Do we
this,
need to
right?
vote?
Yeah.
I'll move.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that sounded like a 5-0. Right, okay, thank you.
So this will come back at your next meeting for formal adoption.
Thank you. All right, reports of council members. Councilmember Pimentel.
Nothing to report.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Nichol.
I want to take this opportunity to invite the public to pay attention and to join myself and 5 senior housing committee members at the next senior housing meeting. The meetings are posted in the El Segundo Herald. They happen on quarterly basis, I believe. Yes? Yeah, quarterly basis. I also want to take this opportunity to remind all of you that we also have a Hyperion Council meeting that meets at the library once a quarter. Friends of the Library room. It's a beautiful room. It has a wonderful mural paid for by donations. No public funds were spent on that mural. These meetings, they're public. Anyone can attend. Anyone can make comments. Senior housing. This is Park Vista. The city owns a building that people live in at a subsidized cost of living. There's lots of big decisions that happen at these meetings, and not only the commissioners for that board, but also the residents are concerned that residents of the city of El Segundo may not even know that building exists and those decisions are being made. So I've been asked to use this forum and this microphone to make sure that everyone in the city, everyone watching this meeting, and it be reflected in the minutes that we do have a senior housing board and they do meet, and those meetings are public, as well as the Hyperion Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Nickel. Councilmember Brand.
Thank you. I do have two things to share related to my service here on the council. First, not a surprise, as you know, when I was sworn in 2016, in the spring, believe it was May, I announced that I wouldn't be running for re-election 4 years down the line in 2020. And nothing's changed with that. I just want to reiterate that. I believe people are going to be able to pull papers and begin to file them for the March 2020 election as early as about a week. I think those will be available. It's earlier this year because we moved the election up a month and sacrificed one of our months of our term rather than going the other direction and running them out to November. So, you know, I have a record of doing what I say I'm going to do. So everybody may reconsider whether they're going to run or not when they know there'll be an empty seat here to fill. That often stirs up more competition. Now, second, and this is a surprise for most everybody, is we have a new governor now in California the last months, and he's different than the governor who termed out. He's already signed 69 bills that Governor Brown vetoed, just showing the difference. As you probably know, maybe from some distance, there's been an ongoing competition between union-led traditional charters, or traditional schools and charter schools. You've seen the UTLA strike, the strikes in Oakland, Sacramento, etc. And the CTA, California Teachers Association, is the most powerful union in California, and gave a lot of money to Governor Newsom during his campaign. The Charter Schools Association put their hopes around the former mayor of Los Angeles, Antonio Villaraigosa, and he lost. And so since Newsom's been sworn in, there's been a lot of legislation that has come across his desk around charter schools and firing some shots across their bow and trying to put them out of business, essentially, if possible, so they don't remain as competition for traditional schools, who are losing a lot of enrollment to charters up and down the state. So one of the shots is, well, all the bills that went to Brown were vetoed for the last 8 years, because he himself was a charter school founder of 2 schools when he was mayor of Oakland, and they couldn't get anything through, even though he had the support of CTA also. But now things are going to get through, and the war is going to continue beyond the damage that was done just in the last few months. So one of the bills is Senate Bill 126. I believe the author is Leyva, L-E-V-Y-A. What this bill says now, and it changes everything from what was looked into before, is I'm not going to be able to continue to serve here on the council and remain on the Da Vinci board where I'm the board president and founder. That's all changing, and it's changing the 1st of January 2020. And I want to live my life in compliance with the law. I have been in compliance with it. As you know, the FPPC supported our city attorney in his analysis about 2 years ago about whether I could be in both roles, and said that's not a problem. Well, now it's a problem, and I'm going to comply with the change. I could choose to stay here, run for re-election again, or I could choose to stay at Da Vinci. Guess what choice I'm making, okay? Because that's something I founded 11 years ago, and I really enjoy working with children and with teachers, and we're going great and have a remarkable future ahead in our attempt to really change the world. So I will be out of here with the last meeting in December, and won't be back in as 2020 begins. And I'll have something to say at that last meeting. I think it's the 17th. Since I'm checking out early, I'm losing about 3 months of the term that I started out to settle, but I don't have any choice about it. So that's the news that I learned recently and got some legal advice around. So you all going to have to figure it out with just 4 of you until pick up the 5th member in the spring. So that's my report. A little different, huh?
It's very different.
Tough act to follow, Dr. Brad.
Yeah.
Oh,
You guys are up.
So is it law? Wait, has he signed the law? Is that in effect already?
He
Or is
signed
I
it,
didn't
and
see
it
that one.
becomes law on January 1.
I didn't see that one. Oh, okay.
And there's no clause that, well, if you're already in the seats, you could just finish it out, you know, which would be my preference, to finish it out. I think we're just going to see more legislation like this get through, and the public wants choice. You know, you don't see charter schools spring up here in El Segundo or Manhattan Beach or up on the peninsula. You see them spring up where things aren't working, like in LA Unified and et cetera across the state. And they weren't working for the Wiseburn School District, who was a feeder district inside of Centinela Valley Union High School District, and haven't been working there for about 30 years. So the charter came about to provide an alternative to families who live in Holly Glen and Del Air and east of the freeway, and virtually no one from those neighborhoods goes to Hawthorne High anymore. And they didn't for a long time now. And so it's a new world order over there, and I've been involved with them since 1953 when I went there as a 3rd grader. So it's been my life, you know, and I'm looking forward to spending the rest of my life trying to make that as good a place as it can be. We're off to a pretty good start with that campus, and things are going well. So I'm not as into city politics as I am into public schools, or any kind of schools, really. I think our future is impacted by giving young people the opportunity to reach their potential. And that's my mission in life, is to change the world through those people and what difference they can make. And having high schools around now, I've usually been an elementary person, I see that coming true more quickly. And I'm just fired up by that work, and looking forward to continue with that. So that's my report.
And happy birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the
Forgot to
cup.
say that earlier, yeah. All right, thank you, Dr. Brand. Mayor Pro Tem.
I just want to say we'll miss you, Don. We'll be quiet up here. But I will also want to thank the staff for the wonderful Halloween frolic that we had on Halloween. I know it was a lot of work from the Recs and Parks Department, Police Department, Fire Department, Public Works. You know, the frolic really brings the community together. As I walk the streets down the street with my sister, who doesn't live in town anymore, she was surprised at how many families and how many people were out and about. And I said, you know, these events really make El Segundo, brings the community together, and it was just so wonderful to see not just the children dressed up, but all the parents dressed up as well. I guess the new trend, that didn't exist when my kids were small. But it was great. I know I gave out over 500 pieces of candy. But I'm just glad that we're able to offer a safe place for kids to trick or treat and be part of the celebration. So thank you to the staff for ensuring that wonderful frolic continues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Always fun to be cruising around El Segundo on Halloween. The energy's contagious. I have nothing in terms of reports. City Attorney?
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
City Manager?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, a few things. Let me start by just reminding the council and pointing out to others that we have our new executive assistant in the city manager's office. This is his first meeting, so Angelo Sotelo, sitting right here. We can embarrass you. You can go up there and just say hello. We're
How
really
about a little
proud-
bit on his background, too?
Yeah.
Quite an impressive background.
Yeah, and I just and you could talk a little bit about your background. Let me tell you, we had, I don't know if it's unprecedented, but an unusually high number of applications, several hundred for this slot. It was a very competitive process. And Angelo came out as number one. We had 4 stellar finalists, I would like to add and inform the council. So, Angelo, just a few words, and we're so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'm coming from Boeing, and as you know, they have a very large footprint in this area. Actually, I spent from 2002 to 2011 working at a Boeing subsidiary at the Pacific Harbor Towers off of Grand and Sepulveda, and I found that to be some of my most productive time and years. It coincidentally to be working in the city of El Segundo. So when I saw the posting, I believe it was on either Indeed or governmentjobs.com, I jumped at the chance to try to get back because there's something special about the city. There's definitely something special to work here. I don't live here, but I kind of felt like it was a second home. So when I went through the interview process and made my way through the rounds all the way to Barbara and Scott, I felt like there was something there. So to be selected, I feel honored. I'm going to do my best to keep Scott well supported and enjoy my time here as an employee of the city of El Segundo. Other than that, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Welcome, Angelo. Yeah. Yes, sir. Go, please.
Okay, and no follow-up from the items today. Thank you for your support on a wide variety of issues. We know we had a full plate for you today. Before I talk about the next council meeting, November 11th, so next Monday is Veterans Day. It's a holiday, so the traditional offices will be closed on that day in observance of that day, but our public safety stuff will be operating, of course. The next council meeting will be 2 weeks from today, November 19th. We'll come back to you with a couple of the items that you contemplated tonight, percent for the arts and the state building, the building code follow-up items, and we'll have a public hearing on the short-term rentals issue, a hot topic, not just in El Segundo, but throughout the state. So we'll come back with that. We may come back with the single-use plastic ban community survey request that is coming to you from the Environmental Committee. So I just want to clarify that. That looks like we're going to come back on the next meeting. That's it by way of city manager follow-up. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Now is the time and place for public communications. Seeing none.
I Actually,
Hold on one second. Scott, real
Sorry.
quick, City Clerk, what's up? Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I realized I spoke because I had my resolutions, but I also had something to say. So
Oh.
sorry.
Did I
Just want
skip you?
to-
Oh, it was
No,
under
you
your
didn't.
report. Sorry,
I
yeah.
was under reports. Because it's probably not clear, not everybody reads the resolutions. The nomination period does open next week on November 12th. Will close December 6th, providing a council member does not run. Then it will extend to December 11th. But I just want to make that clear. It will be in the newspaper, but no one usually reads resolutions. And we had our first VSAP meeting last night in council, so it was really nice. We'll have another one on the November 20th in the Jocelyn Center. So just a reminder. Sorry, Scott.
Yeah, if we could get some more turnout, maybe. That was,
We try.
Yeah. Maybe
well,
we can help you up here.
I believe what is going to end up happening is the closer it gets to the elections, it's the more interest that we will generate. But the county had said that they were only having these meetings in October and November, so we jumped on it. But then last night they stated that they may have available time to do January and February as well, and if they do, we'll jump on that.
that video that they showed us last night, can we get that sent to us so we can put it in Scott's?
Social media.
So we have to check with the county because we actually wanted to video the meeting last night so we could replay it, but we weren't allowed to. So we didn't have their permission, so we'll find out. But
Okay.
you can see that video if you go to VSAP at RRCC.
You already lost me.
Yeah.
So maybe we could put a link.
Just,
Yeah, if you
website. Put a
get it
link.
to us, Scott,
You-
we
Yeah,
can
you
help
send us the link.
You
propagate
can
it.
actually go to LA VoteNet.
Find it there.
and you'll
Okay,
find it.
because I thought it was pretty informative. The video was very informative, I thought. Okay.
It's easier way.
All righty. Let's see, Scott.
oh, I was just saying I saw an ambulance near Mr. Axelrod's house earlier
Oh.
today, so I just normally
just
he's
ran
here to
into him.
speak at.
Yeah, actually, he
comment,
told me
yeah.
he would be here tonight, too. I saw him a couple days ago.
So I had that thought today when I was driving by and I saw that. So.
Yeah, one of us should check on him. Okay. So there are no public communications. I think we are officially done, are we not? 9 o'clock, okay. We're adjourned at 9 o'clock.